My great kingdom of Italy. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 351 Warship Designers. Although I don't know what King Carlo said to Admiral Yaggi when the final 5-year shipbuilding plan was passed, the total amount was already accurate, 289 million lire. This was the total amount of the 5-year shipbuilding plan, including 52 warships of various types were built, with a total tonnage of 128,000 tons. The announcement of the shipbuilding plan has naturally made major shipyards eager to try it. Everyone wants to get a piece of this shipbuilding plan. Among them, the 3 new battleships and 3 armored cruisers in the shipbuilding plan are the core of competition among many shipyards. Of course, it is not an easy task to win an order from the Navy Ministry. Everyone knows that the Italian Navy has high requirements. Sure enough, after the warship requirements were issued to various shipyards, the shipyards immediately fell into mourning. Let's not talk about the equipment patrol. Whoever's design can really meet the requirements of the Navy Ministry will definitely be the benchmark for the world's equipment patrol. Even battleships that seem to be less difficult are still not that low. It is also a difficult problem to make a battleship with higher performance than the Turin class with a displacement of more than 1,000 tons less than the Turin class. However, the whaling is whaling, but there is no way to think about it if the Navy Department lowers its requirements. Therefore, designers at major shipyards can only think hard and come up with a solution that satisfies the Navy. As the current chief designer of the Venice Naval Shipyard, Cuniberti returned to his design department as soon as he learned about the requirements of the Navy Ministry. Cunibert put on his glasses, carefully looked at the request from the Navy Department sent by telegram, and then said to the assistant beside him, "Gulliver, bring out drawings number 8, 19, and 24. As an excellent warship designer, in addition to keeping abreast of the latest technologies and facilities and equipment, Cuniberti also needs to conduct warship design exercises based on new technologies and equipment to keep himself in adequate condition. Of course, others don't know it, but Cuniberti thinks this is the secret to his success. And he did not throw away these practice works, but marked them and saved them. He could take them out and read them from time to time for other gains. Now looking at the warship requirements issued by the Navy, Cuniberti immediately wanted to find a few similar drawings from his practice work for reference. Another person who had the same idea was Benedetto Brin of the Andazol shipyard. As a famous Italian warship designer, Brin also devoted himself to the work day and night. After receiving the request from the Ministry of the Navy immediately, "Cole, bring me the simplified warship map that was sent last month." As a warship designer, Brin is still studious and likes to seek inspiration from warships of various countries. As for the designer named Cole, he is his new student. "Okay, teacher, I'll get it right now, young." Cole immediately went to get the simple warship illustration. Brin straightened up and hammered his old waist, which was sore from bowing for too long. "It's Bernard who wants this old guy to be lucky." Brin was a little envious of his old rival Bernardo Bland. This guy was really capable of taking things and letting go. On the other hand, he had no choice but to retire, even if he wanted to. Although Cole was good in all aspects, he still lacked a little spirituality in warship design. Well, this is Brin's own idea. In fact, Cole is still very good in warship design. He has designed several small warships and has been praised by the Navy. However, Brin compared Cole with Cuniberti, who stunned the entire warship design world when he debuted. Naturally, he couldn't compare. After all, there are different levels of genius. In front of Cuniberti, no other genius dared to say that he was a genius. However, he is unwilling to hand over the burden directly like Benedetto Brin. The best destination for him, Benedetto Brin, is to die on the design desk. So although he regrets the departure of the genius, he still wants to let the world know that he, Benedetto Brin, is still the best warship designer in Italy. Of course, if you want to be the best warship designer, you naturally need to talk about your strength. This time the Navy's request is the best arena. He wants to prove that his sword is not old. However, there is currently a problem. Should he choose a new armored cruiser or a new battleship? This is a difficult problem. People's energy is limited, and it is impossible for him to design 2 battleships at the same time. This is not only disrespectful to other designers, but also disrespectful to other designers. Disrespect for the high demands of the Admiralty. In addition to these 2 famous designers, other warship designers are not far behind. We are all arrogant people, so why should 2 people control the design of large warships? Among them, Alessandro Butel, the chief designer of Fincantieri shipyard, was the most unconvinced. Compared with these 2, Butel has neither Cuniberti's instant fame nor Brin's profound background and skills. However, since he can become the chief designer of Fincantieri, Italy's 2nd largest private shipyard, he also has 2 brushes in ship design. Butel likes to design customers' requirements to the extreme. This style of conduct has attracted many orders for Fincantieri shipyard. In addition, Butel is not only famous for civilian ships, he is also good at designing warships. The current Eagle-class reconnaissance cruiser in the Italian Navy was built by him. So facing this naval shipbuilding order, he would not miss it. Just not missing out is not enough. No one from the major shipyard designers will give up, so there will definitely be a battle between dragons and tigers. Butel is also mentally prepared for this, of course. As an excellent designer, it is also a must to choose which warship as the main direction of attack. At this point, Butel is much better than Brin. At least he has clearly defined his main direction of attack, which is the research of new patrol equipment. Because Butel believes that, although the battleship requirements given by the military do not seem to have increased much, it is actually very difficult to achieve them, while reducing the cost of more than 1,000 tons. Because even after carefully understanding the Turin class, he must admit that the Turin class is very classic, and the 3 points of the warship's fire protection and speed are already very balanced. It is actually very difficult to lose weight. At least in this regard, he believes that he will definitely not be able to compete with Brin and Cuniberti, who designed this level. As for the new cruise ship, although the Navy Department has set its performance at a high level, Butel, who has already designed a cruiser, believes that this is within the scope of his capabilities. Of course, these 3 are not the only Italian warship designers. Other designers are also working hard to produce results that satisfy the Navy. However, if you want the orders to come to you, it depends on the talents of talented designers. As for the situation, the results of the naval shipbuilding tender will be announced in a month's time. Chapter 352 Navy Tender Fair. Rome has entered autumn in September. The joy of this harvest is not only felt by farmers, but also by major shipyards. The heads of major shipyards gathered together with their chief designers. Hello, Mr. Martelli, your Genoa shipyard's business has been very good recently. The 5 15,000-ton cargo ships of Gut Trading Company have not been able to occupy your dock. I'm really envious. You don't know this. If our shipyard hadn't taken over these 5 cargo ships, we would have been so poor that we couldn't solve the problem. It's not like you haven't had a big order for half a year, but you are still living so well. I'm so envious. How can it be possible? Isn't this to prepare for receiving orders from the Navy? Prepare in advance. Prepare in advance. The 2 smiling shipyard directors turned around and left as soon as their hands touched each other, which also proved that neither of them had been able to test each other. Everyone here is a competitor, and they can really get along with each other. You mocked me for not being able to place orders. I mocked you for not being able to lift the pod for half a year, and everyone was half-hearted. Of course, they are both shipyards, and there are differences between big and small. However, among the heads of each shipyard, everyone also has a tacit understanding, such as Acoloni, the head of Andesha shipyard, and Marti, the head of Venice shipyard. Everyone even attacked Yashorn and others. He kept saying all kinds of good things for free, trying to find out something. There is no way. It is difficult for everyone to survive, and we dare not underestimate the 2 largest shipyards in Italy. After all, the opponent possesses weapons of mass destruction and 2 top warship designers. After all, everyone is still unsure and wants to test the tone. However, Lunny and Horn are also the heads of top shipyards. Who can run a top shipyard and is the most fuel efficient person? Naturally, they are very tight-lipped, and the test has no effect at all. Compared with these shipyard directors, the designers are much simpler. although everyone is worried about being favored by the Navy. As for the technicians, what else can they talk about after finally getting together? Naturally, it is technical topics. I prefer scissor type bows. This type of bow is good at resisting sinking and is stable. In addition, it is quite suitable for high-speed navigation. I think that as time goes by, warships using scissor type bows will become more and more popular. Many a designer is talking about the German scissor bow. Since we are talking about it, there are naturally different opinions. This is not only mentioned by another designer. I don't think so. I have also learned about this type of ship bow. Its construction is very demanding and requires a 10,000-ton hydraulic press. The process requirements are also very high, which will push up its cost. Although this type of ship bow has advantages, but the construction cost is too high. Although I don't have specific data on the use of this kind of bow, even the Germans who invented it have not used it much. This is enough to explain many problems. Either the effect is not ideal, or the cost is too high. Even the Germans themselves can't afford it. Faced with the rebuttal of his peers, the designer also argued with his arguments, although I also admit that the current cost of the flying ship type is too high, which restricts its use. But in my opinion, as time goes by, the cost will definitely come down, just like the steel battleships eliminated the wooden battleships. Perhaps 10 years from now, we will be able to see scissor type warships all over the world. No, 10 years is too short. I think it will take at least 20 or 30 years to be possible. Because the process requirements are too demanding, unless the machine is as dexterous as our hands. The debate between the two designers immediately attracted everyone's attention in the small conference room. Considering that they were talking about the future development of the flying ship type, and there were all masters of ship manufacturing and design present, this naturally attracted everyone's attention. Look, point at this time, someone shouted loudly, "Mr. Breen, you are a veteran in the warship design world. Which one of them do you think is more correct?" Well, now all eyes are drawn to Bryn. Point facing everyone's gaze. Bryn was caught off guard, but did not panic, and immediately spoke in his calm voice. "I don't know when the scissor bow will be used on a large scale, but the only thing that wants to win everyone's favor is that the function of this device outweighs the cost. As long as we can understand this principle, there is no need to worry about when the scissor bow can be used." Bryn's answer was very clever. It not only bypassed the focus of the dispute, but also ended the argument between the two parties. It was very good point. Breen's performance drew praise from Horn, who was watching all this from afar. "Your Excellency, Breen is worthy of his high moral character." He ended this debate with just one word. "It is really wonderful." With Breen's help, Andisha Shipyard will continue to grow and develop. Well, the first sentence of Horn praised Bryn, and the second sentence was said to Lonnie beside him. Point facing Horn's praise, Lonnie smiled silently, but who knew the bitterness in his heart? If it weren't for the fact that Venice Shipyard mainly focused on naval orders, he would have thought that this person was trying to make a mockery of him. Point speaking of Mr. Breen's contribution to the development and growth of Andisha Shipyard, he shouldn't have said anything. But some things can only be swallowed and cannot be said out. Especially when he saw the genius Vittorio Cuniberti, he felt even more depressed. Point well, this is a chief designer who covets the other party. But some things are indeed like this. If you don't have it, you may not miss it, but after you get it for a short time, you will inevitably regret it. And Lonnie is in this state. Point especially the better the other party is, the more he feels sorry for him. Such a talent can provide technical support to his shipyard for at least 30 years. But it's useless to think about it now. If you have this time, you should take a closer look to see if there are any young talents emerging. In addition, you need to pray that God will take away the old Bryn later. The whole reason is that Mr. Bryn is too dedicated, and his dedicated spirit blocks young talents with ideas from the door. Well, no matter how you evaluate Mr. Breen, this is the Navy's shipbuilding bidding site, and everyone is here for the Navy's orders. So when the Minister of the Navy, His Excellency Admiral Matus Yagia, appeared with senior naval officers, he immediately made everyone realize that the bidding meeting was about to begin. "Everyone, welcome to this bidding meeting." Regarding this bidding meeting, after Admiral Yagia's brief opening remarks, he continued, In this bidding, our Navy will not lower the indicators at all, so if the design drawings cannot meet our requirements, please consider it carefully, Admiral. Yaji's words immediately caused the meeting place to murmur. This news was to shocking point. You must know that everyone has participated in the bidding meeting before, and it has never been as strict as today. Is there something going on that I don't know about? Faced with the situation at hand, Admiral Yaji did not explain anything. Instead, he started the bidding meeting with a sentence. Chapter 353 New Equipment Patrol Plan, Part 1. In view of the fact that there are too many warships to be tendered this time, the tender meeting will take a long time, about a week. The highlight of the day was the bidding for the 3-ship patrol. According to years of practice, the tender will start from the weak representative of Bologna shipyard. As the Navy's roll call came, the person in charge of the Bologna shipyard, who was sweating, glanced at the designer next to him, who was bowing his head and saying nothing, with a complicated expression. Our Bologna shipyard has given up on the cruise plan. As soon as he finished speaking, the person in charge quickly sat down without caring about other people's eyes, with the Bologna shipyard taking the lead. Several other shipyards were also named and abstained. The successive abstentions made some senior officials of the Navy look unhappy, but considering what Admiral Yaji just said, they could only hold back. As for the person involved, Admiral Yaji, faced with the continuous abstentions, his expression did not change at all, as if all this had nothing to do with him. Some people may or may not have guessed what the Admiral was thinking, but no matter what, this does not affect the continuation of the bidding. With the continuous abstentions, there are fewer and fewer shipyards that have not yet been called. At this time, some people couldn't help but think, will there only be 2 major shipyards left to compete? But their worries soon disappeared, and when they were called to the Fincantieri shipyard, the person in charge, who stood up, finally said something different. Our Fincantieri shipyard has produced design drawings that are in line with the Navy. Let Mr. Buell, the chief designer of our factory, explain them to you. So, in the eyes of everyone gathered, Alessandro Buell stood up. In addition, at the Admiralty, the roll call officer crossed out the name of Fincantieri shipyard, which included all the names of shipyards that had previously abstained. Buell faced the gazes of the crowd and opened the carefully designed drawings. Everyone, this is the design drawing of the patrol equipment prepared by our factory. According to the requirements of the Ministry of the Navy for the new patrol equipment, we have finally met the requirements of the Ministry of the Navy after unremitting efforts. After a brief opening remarks, Buell talked about his masterpiece. In my new patrol plan, the ship has a total length of 151 meters and a width of 23.1 meters. The bow adopts a vertical bow, and I use a long forecastle ship type for this model. There are 3 2-mounted first-level main guns, 2 in the front, and 1 in the rear arrangement. In addition, as for the secondary main guns, I think the 152mm guns currently commonly used by our Navy can no longer adapt to the current form, so I think 8 203mm twin-mounted 45x secondary main guns can greatly enhance the firepower of warships. As Buell explained, his ideas and overall picture were presented to everyone. The entire warship looks very slender, with 2 main gun turrets occupying the front deck, and 1 occupying the rear deck. As for the 8 twin 203mm secondary main guns, they are staggered on both sides of the ship. In addition, Buell also used every opportunity to arrange 10 127mm single-mounted guns, 6 76mm single-mounted guns, and 4 47mm single-mounted guns. Firepower cannot be overpowered, and it is basically a model of firepower supremacy. In addition to firepower, Buell continued to explain other aspects. In terms of protection, Buell met the ship side armor requirements of 115mm to 190mm and an armor height of 3.7 meters required by the Navy. In addition, the armor thickness of the fort also reaches 140 to 190mm. Of course, this is a treatment only available to 2-stage main guns. In addition, the deck armor thickness also reaches 51mm, and the command tower armor is 60 to 190mm. In terms of power, 2 vertical 4-cylinder 3 expansion reciprocating steam engines were selected as the main engine, and 24 Belleville boilers were selected as the boilers. With a power of 22,000 horsepower, which can propel the warship to a maximum speed of 22 knots. In addition, in terms of tonnage, Bugle does not exceed the standard. The standard displacement is 10,900 tons, and the full load displacement reaches 12,700 tons. It can carry 1,600 tons of coal and sail 8,000 nautical miles at a speed of 10 knots. I've just introduced the battleship here. If you don't understand anything, you can ask me. Thank you for listening to my explanation. Thank you all. After introducing the various functions of the battleship one by one, Bugle bowed slightly to those present. The scene immediately burst into applause. Admiral Yaji, the Minister of the Navy, was the first to applaud. He seemed to be very satisfied with Buddha's explanation. Admiral Yaji's performance also made the person in charge of Fincantieri shipyard feel proud. In any case, their Fincantieri shipyard is finally impressive. If he remembered correctly, there were not many shipyards in the future. Sure enough, after Fincantieri, the Navy continued to name names. The remaining shipyards are really on pins and needles right now. It would be understandable if no one can come up with it. After all, it's all due to insufficient technology, which is understandable. And now that they have the Fincantieri shipyard in front of them, it's really uncomfortable behind them. Because everyone knows that they are named according to their strength point. But no matter what they thought, it was their turn, and they were forced to respond by abstaining. Especially the designers from these companies were so ashamed that they wished they could crawl into a hole in the ground. But soon no one paid attention to them because they had read to the end, representative of Andesha shipyard, as they thought of the 2 major shipyards. Many eyes looked directly at them. This time it was Bryn who stood up directly. As expected of the shadow man of the tree, as soon as he stood up, everyone looked at him expectantly. Andesha shipyard has already made a plan. Let me explain it to you next. As soon as Bryn finished speaking, he immediately hung up his drawings without waiting for anyone else's reaction. This is my plan. The new patrol is 161 meters long and 22.7 meters wide. As soon as Bryn opened his mouth, everyone looked at a warship that was slender than that of Fincantieri shipyard. Bryn immediately began to explain. My plan adopts a long forecastle ship type, with 4 boiler rooms installed in the hull, equipped with 28 Belleville boilers, and 2 two-axis vertical 3-stage expansion engines. The output power is 25,000 horsepower. It can propel a warship to run at 23.5 knots. Maximum speed. Bryn's words shocked everyone in the venue. The speed alone made his plan worth looking forward to. Sure enough, I saw him continue talking. In the new plan, there are 6 twin-mounted 254mm 45x main guns. I adopted a layout of 2 in front and 1 in the back. In addition, as for the secondary guns, I think the 152mm secondary main gun is enough, so I arranged 16 to twin-mounted 152mm rapid-fire cannons can ensure sufficient firepower output. In addition, the ship is also equipped with 14 76mm single-barreled rapid-fire cannons and 12 47mm single-barreled rapid-fire cannons. Well, although Bryn's firepower arrangement is not as fierce as Bugle's, it is still not weak, and the amount of ammunition released is enough to drown those opponents, of course. In addition to firepower and speed, protection is also a must. The armor given by Bryn is similar. 115 to 190mm main armor belt, 47mm armor for Class A, 40 to 180mm armor for the command tower, and 140 to 180mm armor for the turret. In addition, in terms of tonnage, the standard displacement is 10,500 tons. The full load displacement is 13,000 tons. It can carry 2,100 tons of coal and run 8,500 nautical miles at a speed of 10 knots. Bryn's plan also attracted a burst of applause, and it has its own advantages and disadvantages. With Bugle, Venice shipyard, with the Navy's roll call, it's time to see what new and eye-catching plan Cuniberti comes up with. Chapter 354 New Equipment Patrol Plan, Part 2. Facing the attention of everyone, Cuniberti did not panic. Although there were already 2 stars in the decoration and patrol plan, Cuniberti still had confidence in himself, and the source of his confidence was the drawing in his hand. I saw him slowly opening his drawing. Everyone, let me tell you about my plan. The length of the ship is 153 meters and the width is 22.7 meters. The ship adopts a long forecastle ship type, with the rails and the command tower combined. Although this will expand its area and increase some costs, it can save space in Class A. Cuniberti pointed to the rails integrated with the command tower on the drawing, and explained his intention. In addition, when it comes to the choice of flue, I chose to combine it into 2 wide and large flues, located behind the rails. Although this makes them more conspicuous, it also helps save deck space. Cuniberti explained his intention of choosing 2 wide and large chimneys. Of course, if he did not do this, then 4 slender chimneys would be located amidships, which would take up a lot of area. Although this will increase the probability of being hit, it is still worth it. After all, the benefits are greater. In addition, for the hull structure, I used cabin miniaturization, and tried to make the cabins watertight, so that watertight cabins can be temporarily added during wartime. In addition, I also used reinforced steel structures for the support walls between compartments, improved the strength and toughness of the compartments, and based on the study of several naval battles, I eliminated all horizontal communication doors between cabins under the waterline, and at the waterline. The number of watertight doors was reduced as much as possible, and the crew's entry and exit were only being able to pass through longitudinal watertight doors increases the difficulty of personnel transfer, but it can improve the sinking resistance of the warship. Cuniberti's explanation made many designers look like they suddenly understood, and they listened eagerly to the genius designer's explanation. In addition to the core cabin, coal burning, water storage and other cabins are located in the mezzanine cabin, which can add additional defense and protect the safety of the core cabin. Since we are talking about the protective power of battleships, let me talk about the battleship armor I designed here. The main armor belt of the hull is 3.7 meters high, protecting the core hull from 0.4 meters below the waterline to 3.3 meters above the waterline. The other armor belts range from the thickest part is 190 mm amidships and extends to 110 mm on both sides. The main deck adopts a dome shape, eggshell principle, with a bulge in the middle and slightly lower sides on both sides, to connect with the side armor, with a thickness of 60 mm. The turret has 162 200mm armor, the command tower has 200 to 60mm armor, and the engine room and ammunition depot are also protected by armor. Cuniberti explained the armor protection of his plan, and others found that this was the thickest of the 3 plans. Of course, since we have talked about hull structure and armor, firepower and power must not be left behind. In terms of firepower, I plan to install 8 254mm main guns, with 2 in the front and 2 in the back arranged on the central axis. In addition, 10 76mm single-barreled guns will be equipped. Cuniberti said this, which immediately caused an uproar, because everyone is a designer and understands the design of warships. Cuniberti's approach of pursuing an extreme number of main guns and completely abandoning secondary main guns is quite extreme. Yes, it's extreme. Nowadays, warships from all countries use 2-stage main guns. They are still worried that there are not enough guns, so they are trying their best to add more guns. Often a warship of 1 to 2,000 tons would carry 20 or 30 cannons, while a warship of tens of thousands of tons would need to carry more and larger cannons. Is it really possible to have a main gun with only 1 caliber? Some people felt uneasy and couldn't help but ask. These words aroused the curiosity of many people, and even Admiral Yaji craned his neck to wait for Cuniberti's answer. There is absolutely no problem. I have calculated it carefully. Facing the questioning looks of everyone present, Cuniberti continued. I have also carefully watched the course of naval battles over the years, and have also made reference to the amount of firepower delivered by battleships. Generally speaking, for a battleship, the hit damage of the first level main gun is better than that of the second level main gun and secondary guns. In addition, I found that the more unified the artillery caliber multiples are, the higher the hit rate of unified fire control shooting is. If this is the case, then why don't we unify the main gun calibers? When Cuniberti said this, the people at the scene fell into deep thought. Worthy of being a pioneer in the dreadnought era, Cuniberti implemented the idea of unifying the main guns. In advance, seeing everyone in deep thought, Cuniberti planned to stop for a moment and continue talking after everyone recovered. The idea is very good. I'm very optimistic about your idea. If you have any other ideas about battleships, please continue talking. At some point, Admiral Yagil was already behind him, patting him on the shoulder and encouraging him. Now that he had Admiral Yagil's permission, Cuniberti continued to speak. In terms of power, I think 24 Belleville boilers and 2 vertical triple expansion engines can be used. The output is expected to be 24,000 horsepower, which can push the warship to a maximum speed of 23 knots. In terms of speed, Cuniberti's performance is quite satisfactory, with no extraordinary performance. But what happened next was different. The ship is expected to have a standard displacement of 12,200 tons, a full load displacement of 15,500 tons, and a draft of 7.8 meters. Heck, the displacement exceeded the standard by so much, which attracted everyone's attention. Of course, they paid more attention to Admiral Yagil's performance. After all, the Navy's requirements limit the standard displacement to 11,000 tons, which is even more when fully loaded. But they thought too much about who Admiral Yagil was. For him, a designer who can design a warship that satisfies the Navy is a good designer. For such a good designer, the Navy department looks at him differently. As for the designer, who can surprise the Navy, he must take care of him. This is a treasure point, so those who want to see the show will be disappointed. Admiral Yagil said with a smile. This plan is very good. I wonder if you have calculated the cost. Oh, look, Admiral Yagil likes it and doesn't even go through the process. He wants to directly appoint it. Admiral Yagil's words made Horn, the head of the Venice shipyard, smile even more. The total cost of the 3 ships is estimated to be 103 million lire. Cuniberti's words immediately made His Excellency the Admiral smile uncontrollably. It's so expensive. Is it a miscalculation? The calculation is correct, Your Excellency. We calculated every item carefully, and this 103 million lire is the lowest cost. Admiral Yagil, who was shocked by Cuniberti's quotation, looked at the battleship on the drawing carefully and reluctantly, silently calculating something in his heart. Perhaps we can show it to His Majesty. Admiral Yagil was reluctant to give up and planned to save the ship. So that evening, Carlo saw Cuniberti's design drawings and the beaming Admiral Yagil explaining it to him. Carlo was also surprised by the warship on the drawing. Isn't this a smaller and reduced version of the battle cruiser? But since Italy has such excellent warships under the influence of the unknown butterfly, there is no reason not to build them. After getting Carlo's approval, the new patrol plan was finalized. However, before Admiral Yagil left happily, Carlo asked him about the research and development of steam turbines. However, Carlo did not understand this. After only getting a bunch of guarantees and promises, he watched the Admiral leave with a face full of joy. Italy is short of steam turbines, and by the way, it is also short of large caliber rapid fire naval guns and new types of shells and propellants. Finally finished chapter 355, the beginning of monopoly organization. If the tender for the cruise ship can be described as a series of surprises, then the tender for the battleship can only be described as frustrated. In fact, when the new parade was exciting, some people thought that, since these top designers had rushed to compete on the parade plan, the battleship plan might not be taken into account. And the result was really like this. With all the plans put forward by the major shipyards, the angry Navy Minister Admiral Yagil wanted to drive these people out, but he still held back in the end. Since Admiral Yagil is not satisfied, the battleship bidding will end in an anticlimactic manner. Admiral Yagil announced on the spot that the bidding for new battleships would be postponed for 1 month, directly expressing his dissatisfaction. The heads of the major shipyards could only look at each other in disbelief and walked away with the senior naval officials. The city of Rome has a fast news transmission speed, so Carlo found out in less than an hour. I really don't know what the situation is that can make Admiral Yagil so angry that he directly announces a 1-month extension. Admiral Yaggi, do you want to promote the merger of shipyards? Early the next morning, Carlo glanced at the documents in front of him and asked the Minister of the Navy, who had woken up. Yes, the document brought by Admiral Yaggi is a submission on promoting the merger of shipyards facing Carlo's inquiry. Admiral Yaggi said without hesitation, "Yes, Your Majesty, I and my colleagues in the Navy believe that promoting the merger and expansion of shipyards will not only benefit the Navy, but also promote the growth of the Italian shipbuilding industry. For this reason, I have discussed with Prime Minister Antonio, and the government and the Navy will promote shipyard consolidation through financial and policy support." Carlo was moved when he heard that the Admiralty had discussed it with the Prime Minister. What did the Prime Minister say? The Prime Minister said that this matter can be promoted by the government and the Navy, but if the royal family is added, the effect will be better. Obviously, Antonio is also a smart man and knows who needs to be involved to make things easier. That's right. Let me think about it. Carlo was a little moved when he heard it, but if he wanted to make a decision, it would be better to find out more about it in detail. Your Majesty, I know quite a bit about our country's shipbuilding industry. The next day, Industry Minister Gregory Medici, who had been in office for more than a year, introduced the shipbuilding industry to Carlo. Yes, the Minister of Industry did come from the Medici family, but he didn't have assassins who obeyed their orders. He was just a family that had already fallen into decline. And this Gregory Medici has been the most influential figure in the Medici family for more than 100 years. At present, my country's shipbuilding industry is gradually developing and growing with the development of industry and trade. However, currently, my country's shipyards are mainly small and medium-sized. Among them, there are 289 shipyards employing more than 200 workers, and 500 or more shipyards. There are 34 companies with more than 1,000 people, only 5 companies with more than 3,000 people, and only 1 company with more than 10,000 people. The total number of people in the shipbuilding industry is 135,000, an increase of 15% from the previous 2 years. The Medici Lord reported a set of data as soon as he opened his mouth. As for why he started counting from 200 people, it is because this is the minimum number of people to build a steamship. Even a small coastal steamer of hundreds of tons must have so many people. It takes people to build. In this era, where we wish we could make everything in our own factories, the only things we can outsource are steel and steam engines. Although the shipbuilding industry is currently booming, there are also many problems. A large number of shipyards have seen the prosperity of the shipbuilding industry in recent years and followed suit. This kind of shipyard has very low technical content and can only build ships of less than 1,000 tons. So now the competition for orders for ships below 1,000 tons is very fierce, and the profit has been reduced to 10%. Although the Minister of Industry did not go into details, Carlo could basically guess that this was a case of too much food and too little food, and it was rolled up. Of course, this kind of small shipyard has little impact on the shipbuilding industry. It is more about witnessing its cruelty point, but Carlo wanted to hear the Ministry of Industry's thoughts. After all, the other party was also professional in industrial development. So what does your industrial sector think of the shipbuilding industry? In our view, although my country's shipbuilding industry is currently booming, there is still a gap with foreign countries. Only 2 or 3 shipyards can stand up internationally, and the others are slightly weak. We believe that Italy is currently there is no problem in the shipbuilding industry integrating 6 or 7 shipyards that can stand up internationally. Of course, the internal integration of the shipbuilding industry itself is too slow and is not conducive to development and growth. It is best to have the government promote and select. Several powerful shipyards have provided funding to help it develop and grow. Well, Carlo, can you still understand this? This is to select seed players, give them the convenience of growth and development, and then release them to win food in the world. In the future, the best ones will develop into monopolies, crazily suppressing surplus value, and even reaching out for power. Carlo understands these monopolies so well. There are so many data and reality comparisons in later generations, but he still doesn't know them clearly. I also think that the current shipbuilding industry needs to be promoted by the government to build several large shipyards to improve Italy's shipbuilding strength. I think this matter can be discussed by your Ministry of Industry and the Navy and come up with a plan for me to review. Carlo's words basically meant that he agreed. Yes, even if these companies will develop into monopolies in the future, they must develop and grow before that. And this is still a long way off. The most important thing for Italy now is to solve the development and growth of the shipbuilding industry first point. And who said that these monopolies can control the power of Italy? Asked him if Carlo did. When necessary, it is still possible to catch 1 or 2 chickens and kill them as a warning to the monkeys using the methods learned by later generations. Carlo felt from the plight of the shipbuilding industry that there should be many industries in Italy that need government support. But before that, it is better to take it step by step and integrate the shipbuilding industry first. After all, the shipbuilding industry is so important to Italy that it is not an exaggeration to say it is the lifeblood. After getting Carlo's consent, the Navy and the government moved very quickly. Within half a month, they came up with a plan to promote the growth of the shipbuilding industry. In the plan, 6 of Italy's currently strongest shipyards were selected and given policy and loan support to support their integration of domestic shipyards. In addition, this plan will not be made public. After all, there is no telling whether this can be done or not. As for the promotion of integration plans in other industries, we still need to wait and see the results after the integration of the shipbuilding industry. Italy's monopoly organizations also developed and grew with this plan. Of course, this is a matter for the future. The Italian shipbuilding industry is still very prosperous now, and it is not easy to promote integration. Chapter 356 East Borneo. The promotion of the shipbuilding industry will not be able to see the effect of promotion within a short period of time, but there is one industry that quite meets the definition of monopoly: the Italian National Grid Corporation. Needless to say, the company has a monopoly on Italy's electricity supply. Whoever wants to use electricity in Italy needs to provide it from the national grid. Is there anyone who can't stand the high-profile monopoly behavior of State Grid? Yes, and quite a few. Those capitalists who are jealous of State Grid's high profits are simply going crazy with jealousy. But this is of no use, because they have nothing to do with the national grid. Politically, the royal family stands behind State Grid. Economically, there are long queues of banks wanting to lend money to State Grid. Not to mention technology, many of the current transmission equipment and technologies in European countries must be authorized by the State Grid. This kind of monopoly enterprise is full of thorns and cannot be criticized. Anyone who wants to compete with it will not be able to solve the competition, whether it is legitimate or unfair competition. Besides, every city in Italy is currently included in the power supply scope of the national grid, so there is no chance to start. Do you want people who are willing to intervene to develop from rural areas? Is this not poverty alleviation? In addition, State Grid is not content with the status quo. They are not only based on domestic development, but also going global. Italy's overseas colonies have long been included in its possession, and they are also developing into other countries. For example, in the Qing dynasty, the State Grid built power generation facilities in Shanghai, Shenzhen, Guangzhou and other places to provide electricity for lighting production. Especially in Shanghai, State Grid built the largest thermal power plant in the world at the time. 2 giant 50,000 kilowatt generators would help Shanghai become a real pearl of the Far East. Of course, the most important place for State Grid's business in the Far East is the Borneo colony. Although no city in the Borneo colony can match Shanghai in terms of electricity demand, the gap in the Borneo colony is very large. Samarinda is located at the mouth of the Mahakam River and is the largest port city in eastern Borneo. As Italy vigorously develops Borneo, the city is also developing rapidly with the help of this trend. 1,000-ton ship docked steadily at the port, and Amancha took a deep breath as his legs stepped on the ground. The smell of land is much better, and the fishy smell of sea is much less. Hey, you guys, welcome to Samarinda. A pair of big hands patted his shoulders heavily, showing that its owner was very strong. Namancha didn't need to look back to know that this voice was too familiar to him. Pox, I told you not to tap me on the shoulder from behind. Be careful of my possible overreaction. Well, old friend, I just didn't expect the company to send you here. Hahaha, I was kidding you. While the two were reminiscing about old times, a voice suddenly came. Namancha, Come to Balikpapan Bay if you have the opportunity. I can entertain you. Don't worry, Ellis. I will definitely come. After the man had gone away, his friend Pokes asked, "Your new friend?" "Yes, we only met at the poker table for less than a week. We said we were going to Balikpapan to mine oil. Do you know where Balikpapan is?" "Of course I know. Oil is said to be found in the bay about 120 kilometers away from here." "Whatever, we don't want to drill for oil anyway. Let's check the supplies I brought here first. Here is the list." After finishing the small talk, Nemantia took out a list and handed it to his old friend. "Let me see if I have enough supplies this time." Now that it was down to business, Ellis naturally didn't dare to relax. He opened the list and looked at it carefully. 2 coal mills, 1 steam turbine, 2 high pressure boilers, and only one 1000 kilowatt generator. I want to. Currently, the company only has 2 backup generators in Pontianak, and Marchen is also planning to expand the power plant. What will Marchen do if I give them to you? After hearing what his old friend said, Ellis knew that there was nothing he could do, and he couldn't give all the generator to him. "Why don't your company prepare more generators in Pontianak? Borneo is developing so well and there are so many places that need electricity." Faced with the complaints from his friends, Nemantia could only shrug. "How do I know this? Maybe the company's demand for my side is ranked lower. Even Shanghai has installed giant generators of 50,000 kilowatts, but the largest generator we have here is only 5,000 kilowatts. Well, it seems Nemantia has a small complaint, but their complaint is just a grumble. What else can be done? This is a decision made by the superiors of the company. How dare they, two-way journers, to point fingers?" After all, the two of them still remained rational and knew that discussing the company's decisions was not a good idea, so they quickly stopped the topic. "You have a lot of immigration ships here." With sharp eyes, Nemantia saw several immigrant ships passing by. These immigrant ships were easy to identify. They had a flat bottom, wide bow and flat cover, and looked like a Chinese ship. But underestimate this kind of ship, which can carry nearly 100 people and 30 people. It can carry tons of cargo, and the water is shallow, and can run very slowly, making it very suitable for river transportation. Isn't this the development of Eastern Borneo? Major companies have acquired a lot of land here. For example, Lin Company, Xiangfu Company, Poly Development Company, etc. have all acquired at least several thousand hectares of land here. Development rights. 8 out of 10 of these immigration ships transport people and materials for their company. As for friends, it's hard to say anything to Nemantia. After all, there are more immigrant ships in Pontianak. Of course, 8 out of 10 would be too much, but 6 at most would be great point. And how could Nemantia's disbelieving expression be hidden from his friends? Ellis continued to talk. "Why don't you believe it? What I said is not exaggerated." Ellis then told Nemantia his reasons. It turned out that in view of the slow development of East Borneo, His Excellency Governor Ambik decided to speed up the pace of development in the area, so he gave many companies a green light to encourage them to develop in East Borneo. Development of Borneo Point. Of course, getting Governor Ambik to give the green light also requires strength. Only those companies with sufficient strength will be valued by the governor. But having said that, in East Borneo, where various infrastructures are not complete, it is really impossible to do anything without relying on these powerful large companies. Although Samarinda displays the atmosphere of a civilized city, it can be said responsibly that there are only a few cities like Samarinda in East Borneo. Let me tell you that there is currently only 1 point. In addition, there are currently less than 3 cities using electricity. The reason for this is, on the one hand, the late development time, and on the other hand, the difficulty of development. East Borneo is inferior to the west and south in terms of climate, terrain, and vegetation, so development is slow. Except for a few port cities that can barely be seen, the inland area is covered with large areas of undeveloped virgin rainforest. In the absence of road facilities, except for powerful large-scale enterprises, others cannot develop it at all. Well, in the face of the facts told by Ellis, Nemantia had to admit that his knowledge of East Borneo was insufficient. I Didn't expect that the development of East Borneo really needs to rely on those big companies, and the new governor Ambik is not bad at all. Chapter 357 The small ups and downs of Pontianak. The great development of Pontianak began when it became an Italian colony more than 10 years ago. After the first governor and former Prime Minister Caroli selected it as the capital, funds from Italy and Nanyang Chinese made Pontianak quickly become a famous place in Nanyang City Point at the same time, thanks to Italy's need to build it into a colonial model city. Pontianak is also very careful in planning roads, water, and drainage systems. Electricity and other facilities are also very carefully considered. To put it bluntly, Pontianak ranks among the top 3 in terms of supporting facilities. Even compared with local cities in Italy Point, there was no way the colonial government had money, so it could do whatever it wanted. And it is precisely because of its supporting facilities that stand out among the rest in Southeast Asia that Pontianak has become a business card showing Italian style. Of course, in addition to this, Pontianak has also attracted people from all over Southeast Asia to settle here. European and Chinese style buildings are dotted throughout the city, and Southeast Asian style buildings are dotted among them, giving Pontianak a charming charm. Today, Pontianak has a population of 480,000, ranking among the top 3 in Southeast Asia. If economic factors are taken into account, Jakarta in the hands of the Dutch is even better than Singapore in the hands of the British. Governor Ambik will never tire of seeing such a fascinating city. What a charming city. His Excellency the Governor, who was standing on the balcony of the Governor's Palace watching the sunset, drank the red wine in his glass in one gulp and handed it to the servant. Ambik was very satisfied with being able to become the Governor of Borneo. Compared with the previous East African colonies, which were all deserts, Borneo is simply a paradise. With abundant output, docile people, and a rapidly growing economy, it was simply a perfect colony. Being able to serve here, Ambik believes that it is His Majesty and the cabinet, because he has stayed in East Africa for several years, and eaten sand rewards given, Your Majesty the Governor, just as Ambik was intoxicated by the scenery, he saw his secretary walking over quickly. What's up? Facing his secretary, Ambik asked directly without looking back. Sir, those people agreed to your request. In addition, they want to ask you if they can buy a stake in the Balikpapan oil field. The secretary whispered something in his ear. The secretary's words made Ambik turn around. He waved and waited for the servant to retreat before speaking. Do these people have too much appetite? The oil in Balikpapan is the heart of the oil company, and I don't even dare to interfere. Facing the words of his own governor, the secretary thought for a while and said, perhaps they don't know enough about the oil field, and don't know what the oil companies are doing. Maybe. So, after listening to the secretary's defense, Ambik continued, but their behavior must be stopped. Italian Petroleum is a joint venture between the royal family and the government, and its status is no weaker than the state grid. Tell them directly, it is impossible. Also tell them, I will add 5% profit. If they don't agree, then I'll find someone else, as you command, my lord. After the secretary left, Ambik continued to watch the afterglow of the sunset. The thing that Ambik asked the secretary to do, which seemed mysterious and mysterious, was actually nothing. It was to acquire the properties of several families. The root of this matter still lies with Yuan Shike. At that time, because there were not enough officers in the new army, Master Yuan set his sights on Italian Chinese officers. Many Chinese officers were dazzled by Master Yuan's high-ranking officials and generous salaries, so they became officers of his new army. Regarding this matter, although Italy did not say anything, there was something wrong with it in Borneo. In the view of the Borneo colonial government, these Chinese officers who joined the King army simply lacked loyalty to Italy. Since it lacks loyalty, its family must be punished. Of course, considering the actual impact, the colonial government also imposed small punishments and large warnings. It only needed to divest some industries, and did not intend to uproot them. If you want to acquire the properties of some Chinese families, the best white gloves are of course those Chinese families who still show loyalty. As the top official of the colonial government, it is reasonable for Governor Ambik to reap a little benefit. After all, it was very hard for Governor Ambik to come to Pontianak across a distance of half the world, so what could be wrong with earning some money to make up for the governor's busy schedule? Even Prime Minister Antonio, who is known for his strength and integrity, brought back millions of liras when he returned from Borneo Point after Ambik's request was sent to the Liu family. Liu Nguyen, the head of the Liu family, immediately called everyone to discuss the governor's request. After telling Ambik's request, Liu Nguyen asked, "What do you think of Governor Ambik's request? How else can we look at it? Can we not give it?" I said, "Don't be jealous of Balikpapan's oil. Just open your mouth and you will lose 5% of the profit." "What are you talking about?" Song Yushin raised his hand to vote, but I saw you also raised your hand. "Why did you complain when you were defeated?" King, which of your eyes saw me raising my hand? "Don't talk nonsense," snapped. Suddenly, a sound of slamming on the table interrupted the two of them. Song Yushin, King, you want to move me to another place? Are you planning on having a fight over that bit of land? After all, Liu Nguyen had been the commander-in-chief of Lanfang before, and the heads of the major families still had to give him a little less favor, so he calmed down. "I made a mistake in proposing to invest in the oil field this time. I originally thought I could get involved in the kerosene business, but I overestimated our strength, General." "Liu, what are you talking about? Aren't you doing this for the sake of the big guys? Don't mention this matter again." Seeing someone offering steps, Liu Nguyen also borrowed the slope to get off his donkey. "That's fine. We won't mention this matter anymore. What about the governor's request for an additional 5%? What else can we do? Can we still be evil to the governor? That's the case. You really can't offend the governor." "Yes sir." Continuous echoes are enough to explain the problem. Of course, there are also different voices. "Would it be bad to target the Lin, Zhang and other families in this way?" Faced with the doubts raised, someone immediately refuted it. "What can be wrong with this? Everyone knows the situation of these families. Since they want to bet on the imperial court, this person must take action. Do they want to have two boats? The colonial government is not allowed to do something." "I didn't mean that. I just wanted to say that if I come forward, how will the people below think? If you feel bad, you can let me go." "Yes." This sentence immediately silenced the other voices. After all, this benefit is so attractive that it is easy for everyone to refrain from taking action. Isn't it true that my family will be isolated? After seeing that no one had any objections, Liu Nguyen continued, "Then this matter has been decided. Everyone should pay attention to it next." Now that the decision was made, everyone naturally dispersed. Liu Nguyen called the housekeeper. "Tell that Dr. Sun that I, Mr. Liu, do not care about his position in the United States of China, and ask him to leave as soon as possible." "Okay, sir." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 358 entitled, "In the following period, several major Chinese families headed by the Liu family suddenly launched an attack and used the properties of Lin, Zhang and other families to pay off their debts on the grounds of debt disputes. Faced with several major families who were in trouble, the Lin, Zhang and other families were not to be outdone and actively raised funds to preserve the industry. Unfortunately, the resistance of the Lin, Zhang and other families was of no use. Several major families who were well prepared and powerful finally took over the industry. The vitality of the Lin, Zhang and other families was severely damaged after this, and they were no longer able to become a well-known Chinese family in Borneo. The sudden acquisition war in Borneo also dazzled the people. But anyway, life goes on. Carl Larson was dressed neatly and went out of the house with a suit jacket in hand. The shirt and jacket were actually a little uncomfortable in the nearly 30-degree weather, but Carl Larson didn't mind this at all because he needed to meet an important guest today and it had to be formal. Rickshaw. Seeing an idle rickshaw in the distance, Carl Larsen's eloquent Cantonese came to mind. It has been 3 years since he came to Borneo, and Carl Larsen can already speak a lot of everyday Cantonese. There is no way there are too many Chinese in Pontianak. As a businessman who has to deal with people every day, Carl Larsen has learned a lot of spoken Chinese. Following Carol Larsen's greeting, the rickshaw rushed over immediately. Good morning, sir. The same well-spoken Italian greeting came out of the mouth of the yellow-skinned coachman. Jaffel Larsen Trading Company, a business house named after oneself, is a characteristic of this era, and Carl Larsen is no exception. Okay. After confirming the address, the driver pulled Carl Larsen through the streets. The streets are extremely busy in the early morning, with scenes of people coming and going everywhere, and the roads are also quite crowded. Horse-drawn carriages and rickshaws run through them. There are also many bicycles on both sides of the road, and you can even see cars, of course. There are also an endless stream of shops on both sides of the street, and the Chinese and Latin characters on the signboards echo each other, which is also a unique style. As Carl Larsen, who has been in Pontianak for 3 years, he no longer appreciates this, and his mind is filled with matters needing attention when meeting clients. Sir, we are here. A voice called him out of his thoughts. Goodbye, sir. Carl Larsen's business is not big. It is more like a larger store than a business. It just has a separate room as an office. At present, the business is still in its early stages of development. In addition to Larsen himself, there is also a clerk and assistant Mori and Admiral Yaji, cleaner, cook, and waiter Ms. Song. That's right. There are only 3 people in Larsen's business, which is pitiful for a small one. However, although the business house was small, it was his entire dream and his entire net worth to Carl Larsen. Carl Larsen was just a craftsman who repaired tailoring machines before. After seeing others making a fortune in Borneo, he felt envious, so he sold his goods and came to Borneo to work hard. Considering the cost and familiarity, Carl Larsen came to Pontianak and still started his old sewing machine business. Of course, we no longer just repair sewing machines for people, but sell sewing machines. Carl Larsen had a good vision. The industry he chose had little competition in Borneo and the prospects were good. Although sewing machines may not look like much, they are basically household necessities. Even if every family cannot have one, it is still necessary for 4 or 5 families to share one. After all, if you want to make clothes and mend clothes, how can you do without a sewing machine? Besides, the people in Borneo have always had good incomes, and they can still afford to spend 1 or 2 months' salary on buying a sewing machine. Carl Larsen has developed well in 3 years, from a one-man operation to now having his own store and employees. Mori, how do I look? Awesome. Perfect for who you are. Mori's compliment made Larsen straighten the wrinkles in his pants. Did Mr. Lee call to say when he would arrive? I told you. He looked around 10 o'clock in the morning. Oh, it's already 9:30, and Mr. Lee will arrive in only half an hour. Mori, let's rehearse the reception process. I have a new idea. Okay, Mr. Larsen, welcome. Mr. Lee. Larsen welcomed the arrival of the big customer with a smile on his face. The big customer he mentioned was indeed worthy. Li Mingkan was also a famous Chinese family in Gaoping. Of course, this had nothing to do with Gaoping. But no matter how he compares, he is still much better than Larsen. It is simply compared to Kunpeng and Sparrow. Yo. Welcome, Mr. Larsen. Let's get started. Facing Li Mingkan's words, Larsen quickly led him into the store. Mr. Lee, please take a look. There are only a few types of sewing machines currently sold in our store. Larsen currently sells 5 types of sewing machines, including 1 from Germany, 1 from the UK, and 3 from Italy. Because this is an Italian colony, German-style and British-style tailoring machines are subject to high tariffs and are mostly used by the middle class and above. Larsen's main sales force are 3 Italian tailoring machines, the Vega brand, the Morning Glory brand, and the Crown brand. What is the lowest selling price of these 3 sewing machines? You know how many I need? After listening to Larsen's introduction, major customer Li Mingkan asked about the price. Sure enough, they directly abandoned the British and German models. Although the performance was indeed good, they were too expensive. One was almost worth replacing with 2 of the cheapest Crown models. He wants to take it back to open a garment factory, so he doesn't need such good machinery. The price of the Vega card can be reduced by 48 lire at the lowest, and it will sell to you for 160 lire. The Morning Glory card can be reduced by 45 lire recently, and will be sold to you for 150 lire. The Crown card can only be reduced by 40 lire, and will be sold to you for 140 lire. Of course, this is a minimum purchase of 500. The selling price of the station. Faced with the inquiry from the major customer, Larsen quickly quoted his price, and finally he added, "Mr. Lee, this price cannot be lower than mine in Pontianak." As soon as he finished speaking, Larsen could only look at the big customer expectantly. Lee Minkan had obviously known about it before. After thinking for a while, he spoke. "I need 1,000 Crown brand sewing machines, but they must be guaranteed for free maintenance for 1 year." "No problem. I will arrange for a maintenance person to be at your factory when the time comes." Larsen was overjoyed to get the order and made the promise without hesitation. This is the largest order he has ever received in business. Although the unit price profit is very low, the quantity is enough for him to earn a lot of profit. Perhaps his wife and children in the country can also take over living in Borneo day after day. There are many people like Larsen who make money, and of course there are also many who lose money and sell themselves to plantations. Of course, no matter who it is, the dream of getting rich in Borneo is not missing at all point, and those who make money are the best advertisements, motivating people who dream of getting rich to rush to this hot land. Chapter 359 Battleships and Education. As the year draws to a close, Italy is getting busier and busier. Admiral Iagia, who was once half infuriated by the new battleship project, has finally achieved satisfactory results. After a fierce competition, the plan of His Excellency Benedetto Breen, the chief designer from the Andazol shipyard, finally won the favor of the Navy Ministry. Point in this plan, the new battleship is 128 meters long and 22.5 meters wide. The total tonnage is limited to a standard displacement of 13,400 tons, a full load displacement of 15,900 tons, and a draft of 8 meters. In terms of firepower, the new battleship is equipped with two twin-mounted 356mm main guns, arranged one in the front and one in the back. There are also 8 254mm secondary main guns in the previous layout of one in the back and one in the middle point. Although the layout is a little weird, there is nothing that can be done about it. The 254mm secondary main gun is much larger than the 152mm that has been used before. Therefore, the two twin 254mm guns arranged in the middle of the ship are arranged in a staggered manner, which can ensure the output of firepower on both sides. In addition, the new battleship is also equipped with 12 76mm secondary guns and 6 47mm guns. In terms of armor, its side armor belt is 3.4 meters wide and 162 320mm thick. Deck armor is 72mm, and turret armor is 320mm. Yes, you read that right. The armor thickness has been reduced. The reason for the reduction is very simple. After using Krupp armor steel, the current armor thickness is enough and there is no need for thicker armor. On the contrary, the hull structure needs to be improved. Considering the threat of increasingly advanced torpedoes to warships, various small cabins that are divided outside the hull are under consideration. Point of course, the mine protection cabin alone is not enough, and the use of armored boxes is also indispensable, so armor protection for key cabins is also essential. Point in terms of power, 12 single-head cylindrical water tube boilers and 2 4-cylinder vertical triple expansion steam engines with 2 shafts and 2 propellers can provide a strong power of 17,000 horsepower, pushing the warship to a maximum speed of 19.4 knots. The endurance is 10 knots and 6,500 nautical miles. The most commendable thing in terms of power is this water tube boiler. As the latest masterpiece of the Naval Power Research Institute, this water tube boiler is very good. It can provide higher power and greater economy, and can improve endurance and efficiency. It is also currently the world's first battleship equipped with a water tube boiler. Generally speaking, this new battleship has limited performance improvement over the Turin class. It is more of an enhanced endurance and firepower version. However, in terms of construction costs, it is not much lower than the Turin class. The shipbuilding cost of 24.5 million lire is not much different. Point of course, this cost is reasonable enough, and the cost of this ship would have to be increased by at least 1 million lire. The Navy gained a lot in 1895, and of course other departments of his family also gained, such as the Ministry of Education. In the 1896 budget, the Ministry of Education received a budget of 348 million lire in one fell swoop, reaching a record high. The Ministry of Education received such a generous budget thanks to its proposal to pilot 8-year compulsory education. Yes, the Ministry of Education believes that the 5-year primary education system currently implemented across the country can no longer meet Italy's demand for talents, so the 5-year system must be changed to an 8-year system to provide the country with higher quality talents. For this reason, Education Minister Lilian Dillon has traveled many times to explain to the Prime Minister and the King the importance of 8-year compulsory education. According to him, if compulsory education is increased to 8 years, it can provide Italy with at least 250,000 qualified technical workers every year, and at the same time, increase 20,000 students in higher education institutions. This will definitely greatly improve the level of Italian scientific research and benefit Italy from various fields. In terms of catching up with the great powers of other countries, Mr. Dillon is not talking nonsense. There is sufficient evidence for this. As far as the current compulsory education in Italy is concerned, the enrollment rate is 96.4% of school-aged children, and the graduation rate is 91.7%, which fully proves the support of Italian families for their children to go to school. However, adding 3 more years of study time will not reduce the enrollment rate too much. Allowing more school-aged children to learn more knowledge, which will also have a huge demographic dividend for the development of Italy. Yes, this is what the wise and mighty king said. Isn't the word demographic dividend a good? On the contrary, there is a population trap. Of course, with a fiscal budget of 348 million liras, does the Ministry of Education need to spend it to achieve results? All this has already been planned by the Ministry of Education. At present, the Ministry of Education plans to pilot 8-year compulsory education in several places. They are Lombardy region, capital Milan, Lazio region, capital Rome, Campania region, capital Naples, and the Viceroyalty of Sicily, capital city, Palermo, Borneo colony, capital Pontianak. You read that right. The Ministry of Education has an ambitious plan to provide 8-year compulsory education to 1/3 of the local population and 70% of the overseas population. Although this is not planned to start within 1 year, the 2-year plan is still ambitious. Of course, the Ministry of Education also has its own ideas. Among the first large regions and colonists to implement 8-year compulsory education, their local governments must share part of the financial burden. The specifics vary from person to person. For example, in Campania and the Viceroyalty of Sicily, which are not very wealthy in the south, the Ministry of Education may allocate more money. The northern region of Lombardy and the Lazio region, where the capital is located, rely more on local governments to bear their financial pressure. As for the Borneo colony, it was mostly self-financed, with the Ministry of Education supporting at most a group of teachers. Yes, this is what a colony is like. Fortunately, the colonial government of Borneo had money and could afford it. Of course, according to the Ministry of Finance, when it comes to which local government in Italy is the richest, Lombardy is not as good as Borneo. They make money by selling various resources. In addition, the reason why the Ministry of Education is so stingy is simple. Building a middle school requires a lot of money. Taking a medium-sized secondary school with a capacity of 800 students as an example, it requires about 2.1 million lire in funds and more than 40 teaching staff. Judging from the current goals set by the Ministry of Education, there is a need to add or expand 150 to 180 junior high schools in the country. Some are large and some are small, and in some places the student resources of junior high schools cannot meet the facility standards. This requires only 300 to 400 million liras for construction or expansion funds. How can it be possible with the little money of the Ministry of Education? Therefore, it is necessary to consider funds at this time. Of course, it is not enough to rely on funds. For example, the two major districts in the south consider the issue of balance between the north and the south. Lazio, on the other hand, took into account the capital factor. As for Borneo, it is completely a big dog point. As for northern regions such as Piedmont, the capital is Turin, Venue, the capital is Venice, and Liguria, the capital is Genoa. Why not choose them? This teaching force is not enough, so we can only give priority to the carefully selected districts, and other places will take second place point. And considering that the addition of junior high schools will also increase the number of students in high schools and universities in the future, this is not just a matter of establishing junior high schools. The expansion of high schools and universities also needs to be considered. Point in a word, increasing the number of years of compulsory education is not a matter of words or just money. Issues that need to be taken into consideration cannot be ignored. Chapter 360, The Army's Ambition. In the Italian government's fiscal budget of 1896, the Ministry of Education was the big winner. Of course, except for the Ministry of Education, other departments have their own gains, but in any case, the Italian fiscal budget reached a new high in 1896, totaling 1.756 billion lire. Among them, military expenditure is still the largest category, and the cost of 371 million lire is the largest budget category. Point of course, in this first category, naval funding has also reached a new high, and the cost of 179 million lire is very good. Of course, this cost also includes the allocation for the first year of the 5-year shipbuilding plan. Even after deducting it, the Navy still has 115 million lire. Point for these expenses, the living salary of naval personnel requires 47.1 million lire. Then there is the cost of training and maintenance. The naval expenditure in this area is 34.1 million lire. Then there are the three phases of equipment purchase expenses, engineering construction expenses and scientific research funds. The total cost is 33.8 million lire. Point among them, engineering construction expenses and scientific research funds account for the majority. Equipment procurement expenses are also affected by the shipbuilding plan, mainly the update of warship equipment. As for the procurement of new warships, they are directly merged into the 5-year shipbuilding plan. Well, in fact, compared to the Navy, which is active in all aspects, the bulk of military expenditure still belongs to the Army. Point however, although the Army's funding is not large, it is still just a scrap. Point first of all, the Army has more personnel. Even if the Army's salary is very low, it is still a considerable expense. The annual personnel living salary of 63.1 million lire cannot be reduced at all. Point in addition to this personnel cost, its training and maintenance costs are also 52.4 million lire. Then there are equipment purchase fees, project construction fees and scientific research funds. However, compared with the Navy, the Army's equipment procurement expenses are the absolute largest, accounting for 51.2 million of the 76.5 million lire. Such high procurement costs for the Army are also necessary, according to the 1895 Italian Army Establishment Plan formulated by Chief of General Staff General Simeon. Each Italian Army division needs 72 barrel artillery pieces of various types. At present, the 24 divisions of the Italian Army need 1,700 artillery pieces. In addition, the Army currently has 6 independent heavy artillery regiments, each of which is equipped with 24 to 52 large caliber artillery pieces. This is more than 200 large caliber artillery pieces. If you include the fixed artillery in fortresses and checkpoints, the actual artillery demand of the Italian Army is more than 2,400. So does Italy currently have 2,400 artillery pieces? In fact, there is, and not only that, it exceeds the standard. However, the number of artillery pieces that exceed the standard of the Italian Army is actually more artillery that does not meet the requirements and exceeds the standard. We have now entered the era of rapid fire artillery. The armies of various countries are rushing to replace the rapid fire artillery with retractable tubes. As a member of the great powers, the Italian Army is certainly not willing to fall behind. The Italian army is also replacing artillery point, and this artillery is expensive, and it will not be possible to replace it in a short time point. Moreover, the Italian army had other thoughts, and the cannon was replaced even more slowly. Point in recent years, the Italian army has had frequent exchanges with Germany and Austria, and the scale of exercise confrontations has also become larger and larger. There are already military level confrontations. The Italian army benefited a lot from the exercise and confrontation, and corrected many of the problems discovered. But there is one problem that requires a lot of effort, and that is the problem of artillery point. In many exercises, the Italian army's small and medium-sized artillery was completely crushed by the German large caliber artillery point regardless of power or range. Most of the artillery equipped by the Italian army is slightly inferior. This is indeed the case. At present, the artillery equipment of the Italian army divisions is mainly 76mm mountain field guns, and there are also a small number of 80mm and 57mm artillery. At the division level of the German army, there are 77mm field guns and 105mm howitzers. At the division level, the quality of Italian artillery was completely defeated. As for the Italian army, the gap is even greater. The 105mm howitzers and 120mm cannons are equally difficult to match the German 150mm and 120mm artillery point. Considering that the main imaginary enemy of the German army is the French army, the Italian army, which has the same goal, must make some changes. The general staff led by General Simeon did have this idea. In view of the fact that the large number of artillery calibers in the army was not conducive to logistical considerations, they first determined the requirement for unified artillery calibers: 37mm, 57mm, 76mm, 105mm, 120mm, 150mm, 210mm, 240mm. These calibers will serve as the unified standard for Italian army artillery point. As for artillery of other calibers in the army, in principle, they should be replaced as much as possible. These replaced artillery can be sold to other countries for use. Point of course, the goal of unifying the caliber is to enhance the army's combat effectiveness. Therefore, in General Simeon's plan, the army needs to eliminate 57mm artillery at the division level and increase the need for a battalion of 18 105mm howitzers. In addition, at the corps level, 105mm artillery can be decentralized to divisions, and 150mm caliber artillery can be added. Point of course, in addition to the enhancement of artillery, Simeon and his colleagues took into account the current military needs, and believed that more defensive weapons such as Maxim machine guns needed to be equipped, so 4 guns in a battalion was very reasonable. In addition, considering the pressure on logistics caused by the increase in artillery and other technical weapons, the number of logistics personnel has also been increased by a certain amount of personnel and animal-drawn vehicles. This kind of division with enhanced firepower and logistics personnel was the division established in 1895 as identified by Simeon. However, to complete the refitting of all Italian divisions and corps levels, the army's military expenditure is simply not enough. They know their own business, so the general staff and the army department plan to use 223 Corps and their subordinate divisions as pilots to test the combat effectiveness of this Italian army with heavy firepower standards. Of course, the cost of such a unit will not be too low. After all, the factory cost of a 105mm rapid fire grenade cannon is as high as 150,000 lire. Not to mention that the artillery is not cheap. A 105mm high explosive artillery shell costs 206 lire. For the army, the purchase fee can't buy much. But no matter what, this also represents a change in the Italian army. It is no longer satisfied with the conservative idea of based on homeland defense and wants to pursue the idea of defending the enemy outside the country. Of course, the development of the Italian army is a good thing. In addition to the education budget, which ranks second, and the military budget, which ranks first, the Ministry of Transport ranks third. As the department mainly responsible for the planning and construction of Italian transportation, it has received a budget of 268 million lire. Although Italy has relatively developed shipping due to its terrain, it will not forget the road construction on land. At present, the Italian Ministry of Transport has built railways in all major regions, but in addition to railways, ordinary roads also need repair and maintenance. Examples include the cobblestone roads that connect towns and cities, as well as the compacted cinder and asphalt roads that connect cities. Of course, these alone are not enough, and the current expansion of various ports is also included. At present, Italy's economic momentum is developing very well, so the demand for terminal throughput is relatively high. Therefore, many terminals in Italy have been expanded to meet the increasing cargo throughput point. In addition, there are many things that the Ministry of Transport needs to pay attention to, such as the maintenance of the Libyan Iron Ore Railway and the maintenance of the Kosovo Coal Railway. These two heavy-duty freight railways are very important to the Italian steel industry and require more attention from the Transportation Department. The Italian Ministry of Transport has a large amount of funds, and there are also many other departments, such as the Ministry of Agriculture, the Ministry of Industry, the Ministry of Trade, etc. The expenditures of these departments constituted the composition of the Italian government budget in 1896. Of course, the government needs to refer to the previous year's fiscal revenue when designing its budget. So what was Italy's total fiscal revenue in 1895? Chapter 361 Summary of 1895. 1895 was a fruitful year for Italy. No matter which way you look at it, it is a successful harvest. First of all, in terms of influence, Italy taught Japan a lesson through the expeditionary force in the Far East, allowing other countries to see Italy's long-distance intervention capabilities. Of course, Italy's greed for money and its desire for money, rather than life, was also exposed. However, it is still unclear whether this is a good thing or a bad thing, but at least in the eyes of various countries, Italy is no longer a dispensable role, and various countries will also consider Italy's attitude to some extent. Of course, the expansion of influence is an additional gain for Italy, and the most important gain is economic gain. Although Italy's direct monetary gains from this Far East war were not much, the indirect gains were very substantial. During the entire Sino-Japanese War, the total casualties of the Italian Navy and Army were 4,217, of which 1,721 were killed, 2,470 were injured, and 26 were missing. The casualties seemed not small, but they mainly occurred in naval battles. Among them, the most profitable one is the military industry. In just over half a year, the arsenal worked overtime to produce artillery shells that were simply not enough to meet the needs of the Far East. A batch was also urgently transferred from the Navy and Army reserve warehouses to be shipped there. And in addition to the military industry, war-related industries such as maritime transportation and the steel industry have all benefited from this dividend. And it is precisely with the help of the dividends of this war that all related industries have been fully developed. The dividends brought by this war alone were not enough. Italy's acquisition of the right to build the Peng Railway was the key. However, Italy could not monopolize this benefit, but in terms of the crucial procurement of materials, Italy used its relationship with the Qing dynasty and its own sufficient share to ensure the procurement rights of the railway. At present, the Peng Railway Company has launched the construction of 3 railways at once: the Luhan Line, the Guangdong-Hankow Line, and the Nanjing-Shanghai-Hangzhou Railway. In addition, it is said that the railway company is exploring the direction of the Jinpu Line and Langhe Line. The Peng Railway Company's urgent and continuous start of construction is actually driven by shareholders from various countries. The great powers of various countries have a strong interest in promoting the construction of railways in the Qing dynasty, especially after most of the shares of the Qing dynasty railway company fell into the hands of various countries through private acquisitions. And I heard that in addition to these 2 railway lines being explored, various countries are also interested in the Kanto Railway from Xianjin to Shengjing. Russia, in particular, has a strong interest in extending a branch line from the Siberian Railway to Shengjing and Lushan. This was just the idea of the Russians, but it was boycotted by the British and Italy. No one knew what this polar bear had in mind. In addition to the Kanto Railway, which has caused constant conflicts among various countries, France is currently very interested in the Yunnan-Vietnam Railway, and the British are also very interested in the Sichuan-Hankow Line. Of course, railway lines such as the Sichuan-Shaanxi line, Sichuan-Yunnan line and Changjiang-Ningxia line are also in the plans of various countries. It's ridiculous to say that other countries are more anxious to build railways than the Qing dynasty, but this is also based on the fact that railways can help them expand their influence and penetrate into the inland areas. Therefore, all countries came with different thoughts, but even if the Qing dynasty knew about it, there was nothing they could do. The combined pressure of all countries was unstoppable. Point of course, Italy was the happiest about the Qing dynasty's large-scale railway construction. After all, except for the Hanyang Iron Works, the rails and steel needed for the railway were all owned by Italy. This is at least the demand for 100,000 tons of steel per year, which has a great role in promoting the Italian steel industry. Point promoted by such a favorable time, place, and people. Italy's fiscal revenue in 1895 also reached a record high of 1.827 billion lire. Yes. It is such a high total fiscal revenue. Compared with the total government revenue in 1893 2 years ago, it was 317 million lire higher. From this number, we can see how much this Far East war stimulated the Italian economy. Point in this fiscal income statement, the number one ranking is tariffs. In 1895, Italy achieved a total of 374 million lire in tariffs. The ability to increase so many tariffs is due on the one hand to Italy's strong import and export growth, and on the other hand to the severe crackdown on smuggling and tax evasion. The crackdown on smuggling also benefits from the government's emphasis on customs, which allocates a lot of manpower and ships to the customs. The customs has lived up to expectations. Last year, it intercepted 146 smuggling ships, arrested 1,123 suspects, and seized illegal goods worth 32.69 million lire, which dealt a heavy blow to the arrogance of smugglers. Of course, to a certain extent, how frequent smuggling activities are in Italy has a lot to do with the topography of Italy. There are too many coastlines across the country, which is very conducive to smuggling activities. In addition to tariffs, the second largest category of fiscal revenue is salt and tobacco monopoly taxes. That's right, it's the franchise tax that everyone understands. This state monopolized industry provided the government with fiscal revenue of 326 million liras, which was comparable to the tobacco and salt monopoly taxes of a certain country in later generations, which were directly called military expenditures. Of course, in addition to these two major types of taxes, the next one is the consumption tax. This kind of tax was placed directly on the goods in a later country, so it is not obvious, but if you go abroad, you will find that it is listed separately. The excise tax provides 215 million lire in revenue to the Italian exchequer. Then there are property taxes, business taxes, land-related taxes, stamp taxes on securities transactions, etc. These taxes support Italy's finances and allow Italy to have more funds to enrich its national strength. When it comes to national strength, the most direct one is the steel industry. In 1895, the Italian steel industry produced a total of 2.7 million tons of steel. What allows Italy to produce so much steel is, on the one hand, domestic demand, and on the other hand, it is reflected in tariffs. Italy has increased tariffs on imported coal, iron ore and steel products, directly increasing them by 21% without charging any taxes. Although this caused dissatisfaction between Germany and France, Italy gritted its teeth and withstood the pressure in order to protect its domestic steel industry. Although Germany and France subsequently raised tariffs on Italian wine, figs and other agricultural products, protecting the country's steel industry was worth it. After the tariffs were raised, coal and iron ore from Libya and Kosovo immediately became very attractive, making mining and railway transportation in the two places extremely busy. Of course, it is not just the steel industry that reflects Italy's national strength. As a representative of light industry, Italy's textile industry is also developing very well. Currently, Italy has nearly 300,000 textile workers, producing 148,000 tons of cotton yarn and 42,110 tons of woolen fabrics. As a representative of light industry, the textile industry is booming in Italy. Of course, agriculture, which is the foundation of Italy, has also developed significantly. Taking pesticides and chemical fertilizers that promote agricultural development as an example, Italy's current annual output is 21,000 tons of phosphate fertilizers, 17,200 tons of potassium fertilizers, and 1,571 tons of pesticides, although this may not seem like a lot. In this era, when chemical fertilizers have not yet been used on a large scale, being able to produce so much fertilizer is the result of Italy's vigorous promotion. Due to the importance it attaches to its own agriculture, Italy attaches great importance to any fertilizer that improves crop yields, although Italy has a shortage of resources due to various reasons, compared with domestic arable land, overpopulation and other factors. But the Italian government is also working hard to change all this. Italy immigrate nearly 100,000 people to its colonies every year in an effort to alleviate the population pressure on the mainland. In addition, Italy's current efforts to search for various resources in various colonies have continued. For example, in the Somali region of East Africa, Italy discovered a good copper mine. Around the development of this copper mine, the East African colonial government also raised funds overall. 1895 was a very memorable year for Italy. Chapter 362 Marcel. It was approaching dusk, and Marcel's shadow grew longer. As he climbed the gentle slope in front of him, the familiar town of Graia appeared in front of him. Looking at the town in front of him, Marcel moved his sore buttocks and drove the donkey over on the cobblestone road. The crisp footsteps of the donkey are very clear after seeing Marcel. The residents in the town greeted him warmly. Good afternoon, Mr. Marcel. Doctor Marcel, you're back from a medical visit, Mr. Marcel. Facing these enthusiastic people, Marcel kept smiling and nodding, and occasionally had to answer a few questions. It's not that Marcel doesn't want to talk to them, but that he still doesn't recognize them all. Many people can't even call them by their names. How do you ask him to greet each other? In fact, Marcel can't be blamed for this, because he has only been here for a month, so how can he get to know everyone so quickly? As for why everyone is so enthusiastic about Marcel, who has only been here for a month, we can learn a lot from his name. That's right, because Marcel is a doctor, the only doctor in the town. The town of Graia is located in the northeastern corner of Sardinia. It has poor products and sparse cultivated land, and relies more on fishing and animal husbandry. There are more than 3,000 people in the town, and only a few hundred residents live in the town. The small population and the lack of rich products have also led to widespread poverty among local residents. Therefore, Genoa town is not rich in commerce, and there is only one grocery store. As for the clinic, it was Marcel's family, and he was the only one qualified to practice medicine. The enthusiasm of the people in the town put a lot of pressure on Marcel, because he had just left school not long ago, and he was still a complete novice. If he was asked to take the lead alone, it would definitely be a lot of pressure. Yes, Marcel graduated from Genoa Medical College. For him who graduated from a non-famous medical school, he realized after graduation that it was so difficult to find a job. He couldn't get into the national hospital, and many of the private clinics in the city didn't want him because they thought he wasn't a famous medical school. It was not easy for someone to ask for it, but they were only willing to let him be an assistant. The assistants here can actually be called apprentices. When the arrogant looking private clinic doctor said that he would only have room and board for 3 years, and that he would be paid after 3 years, he was acting like a charity. How could this satisfy Marcel, who was already in debt because of his studies? So after making a difficult decision, Marcel joined the medical insurance service and became a doctor who voluntarily accepted assignments. This medical security service plan is designated by the Ministry of Health, mainly to ensure that medical services cover every town in Italy, and medical services must be provided even in remote areas. As we all know, this medical service dislikes the poor and prefers the rich, so there are many doctors in big cities, but there may not be a single doctor in remote areas. Of course, you can't blame anyone for this. Doctors are human beings too, and they also need to eat. The Italian Ministry of Health launched this service in view of the lack of medical facilities in remote areas. Of course, the most important thing in this service is doctors and funding. In this regard, it can only be said that it is indeed not easy for the Ministry of Health. For a novice doctor like Marcel, the Ministry of Health can only offer a monthly salary of 180 lira. Of course, this salary is on the low side. Compared with the 350 to 800 lira in the city, there is a big gap. However, Marcel failed to graduate from a prestigious medical school, so he could only get less. In addition, Marcel's clinic in the small town of Grala is also funded by the government. It can be said that except for him, everything is provided by the government. Of course, the government will not crack down on ambitious young people like Marcel. He only needs to serve here for 5 years, and then Marcel will get the opportunity to return to the city and enter a public hospital. This is also part of the Ministry of Health's reward. Marcel's clinic is very conspicuous. Next to the church in the town, the bright red cross sign makes it obvious that this is a clinic. After getting off the donkey and pushing the door open, Marcel put down the salted fish in his hand and the medical bag on his back. Dr. Marcel, you are back. Miss Caroline, the only nurse in the clinic, immediately discovered Marcel. Yes, Miss Caroline. Can you get me a cup of coffee? Come. Right away. The hot coffee was brought to Marcel. Smelling the aroma of the coffee, Marcel asked while putting sugar. Is there anything going on today, nurse? Caroline, who was sorting the medicines, continued to sort out the medicine and answered. No, there is nothing going on today. Everyone knows that you are going to Collie village for medical treatment today, so no one comes today. Okay, thank you for the coffee you brewed. It's very delicious. By the way, the salted fish you have is a gift from the enthusiastic villagers. You can't refuse even if you want. Nurse. Caroline is from a small town. Her husband is frail and sick, and there are children and elderly people at home. Life is very tight, and Marcel helps whenever he can. Thank you, Dr. Marcel. If you have time, my family would like to treat you to dinner. There will be time. I have been traveling for a long time today, and I'm too tired. While the two were talking, suddenly a man hurried in with a nervous expression. It's Dr. Marcel here? Dr. Marcel, what's the matter? When the man saw Marcel standing up, he immediately stepped forward and held his hand, as if he was afraid that he would run away. Dr. Marcel, I'm Andy from Boar village. My sister-in-law was pregnant and gave birth today, but she couldn't stop the bleeding after giving birth. Please follow me and have a look. Marcel felt a little dizzy after hearing Andy's words. He knew about the maternal hemorrhage, but he didn't study gynecology, and the teacher at the college only gave a general introduction. Moreover, it would be too difficult for him, a trainee doctor, to preside over this kind of surgery. Marcel hesitated a little when he thought of this. Seeing Dr. Marcel's expression, and he guessed something and hurriedly talked about it. Dr. Marcel, please don't worry. No matter how good the treatment is, we will not blame you. Facing Andy, what can Marcel say now? He can only bite the bullet. Nurse Caroline, prepare hemostats, gauze, anesthesia, candles and other surgical supplies. Andy, you wait outside. Life is at stake, and as a doctor, Marcel is duty bound and steps forward to help Nurse Caroline prepare surgical instruments. The two got ready quickly, and Nurse Caroline followed Marcel out carrying the surgery box. There was also a donkey beside Andy who was anxious outside the door. Now Marcel breathed a sigh of relief. It was okay. You lead the way. Okay. The town of Boar village is not far away, only 3 or 4 kilometers away, and Andy's house is on the left side of the village. When Marcel appeared with Nurse Caroline, the anxiously waiting villagers breathed a sigh of relief. Dr. Marcel is here, and all can be saved now. Under the expectant eyes of the villagers, Marcel walked all the way to the bedroom that was temporarily used as the delivery room. There was a strong smell of blood in the room. In addition to several middle-aged women, there was also a man holding a newborn baby and talking to the patient. However, when they saw Marcel, they immediately moved away. Marcel saw the bloodless mother at a glance, and her eyes were already a little blurry. Quick, prepare hot water, candles and a mirror. Marcel couldn't care about anything else at this time and quickly asked people to prepare. The hot water is here. A middle-aged woman held a hot water basin in front of him. Marcel continued to ask, after washing his hands, who was responsible for delivering the patient before it's me. A middle-aged woman stood up, tell me about the previous situation and how long the bleeding lasted. Taking advantage of the time to dry his hands, Marcel quickly asked about the patient's condition. Enua had a stomach ache at 8 o'clock in the morning. She gave birth to a baby boy about 2 hours ago. Then we found that the bleeding couldn't be stopped at all, so we quickly asked Andy to come to you for help. After understanding the situation, Marcel continued to give instructions. Now light the candles, the gentlemen go out, and the women come over with mirrors in hand. Give me the anesthetic needle, Caroline. The men who were kicked out next could only wait anxiously, hoping that Dr. Marcel would pull Anno back from the hands of death. An hour or two later, the moon has risen to the branches, and there is finally news. Marcel stumbled out. Doctor, how is my wife? Anuo's husband rushed over with the child in his arms and asked, it's not bad. The bleeding has stopped. I need to take good care of myself next. Marcel was met with cheers and, of course, thanks. Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you very much. It doesn't matter. This is what I should do. Amidst the thanks, Marcel had a wonderful feeling. It was great to save life from death. There are many people like Dr. Marcel in Italy who actively or passively provide basic medical services to remote areas. But no matter what, this is good governance, allowing the vast majority of Italian people to receive basic medical services. Chapter 363 Li Zhangtang's visit to Italy, Part 1. As the outer port of Rome, the port of Antium has always been extremely lively. On March 28th, the Antium port side was cleared. Anyone who is familiar with this scene will immediately know that a big shot is preparing to visit. As expected, it didn't take long for the decorations to begin, and the Qing Dynasty dragon flag and the words friendship between China and Italy were also hoisted. Needless to say, the big shot from the Qing Kingdom in the Far East just didn't know who this big shot was. More than 20 nautical miles away from the port of Antium, the French cruise ship Inastassimon is sailing towards the port of Antium. Everyone on the cruise ship knew that there was a big shot on board. That's right. Li Zhangtang, the long-lasting leader of westernization in the Qing Dynasty and the former governor of Biang, is on this ship. Li Zhangtang's visit this time sounds simple, but in reality it is very complicated. To put it simply, the main purpose of Li Zhangtang's visit was to attend the coronation ceremony of Tsar Nicholas II and to visit other great powers. What's complicated is that Li Zhangtang was forced to drag his 74-year-old age across the ocean for a state visit. For this reason, Zhangtang's family was afraid of any mishaps. In addition to Li Zhangtang's two sons, Li Jingfang and Li Jingshu, they also prepared an new coffin to accompany him. Speaking of which, Li Zhangtang's situation was the result of the combined efforts of the emperor and the empress. It is true that the increasingly fierce dispute between the emperor and the empress in the Qing dynasty was able to exclude Li Zhangtang abroad with such a tacit understanding, which is enough to show that both sides were afraid of him. But in the final analysis, Li Zhangtang's strength was insufficient. The Hui army he relied on for support was beaten to pieces in the Sino-Japanese War of 1894 to 1894. If he hadn't invited foreign soldiers, he would have fallen. However, although Li Zhangtang used Italian reinforcement to avoid being killed on the spot, some things are unavoidable. The Hui army, which had lost its prestige, was left on the Yalu River line outside the pass by the imperial court. It was said that the Hui army was the most familiar with the Japanese, so the Hui army needed to be more tolerant. And Li Zhangtang, who lost the Hui army, had only one reason left to wait. This happened for no reason. Russia took the opportunity of the coronation of Tsar Nicholas II on May 26, 1896 to send an invitation to the Qing government, hoping that it could send important officials to attend, and more importantly, discuss how to restrict Japan. With North Korea as a springboard, Japan began to arm itself to protect North Koreans who crossed the border for reclamation. Its sinister intentions can be seen at a glance. Yes, even when it was still a vassal state, the Korean people had a tendency to cross the border to cultivate land. On one side is a vast and sparsely populated land outside the customs, and on the other is the Korean peninsula with less land and more people. North Korean people close to the border had long been engaged in cross-border reclamation. Every year after the beginning of spring, we would choose a remote location across the river boundary to open up wasteland and plant the land, and wait until autumn to harvest again. Point of course, if you encounter officers and soldiers, you will consider yourself unlucky, but at that time, the King Army had few troops outside the customs and often only patrolled the border once a year. Under such circumstances, it was really bad luck to encounter them. Now the Japanese's intention is obviously to encroach on the Langsing land outside the customs. How can they not make the Qing dynasty fearful and take more precautions? So this time Li Zhantang went abroad with a different purpose. This visit to Russia did not go to the Black Sea via the Suez Canal but to Italy. This was also Li Zhantang's own deep intention. Bo. Crossing. Where is this ship? In the first class box. Li Zhantang, who was not in good spirits, asked his eldest son Li Jingfang, "Father, this ship is approaching the outer port of the Italian capital. It will arrive in another hour." After hearing what his son said, Li Zhantang struggled to stand up, "Hurry and get my official uniform and hat. This visit must be taken seriously." Seeing that the old father was about to get up, his two sons came to comfort him. "Father, please don't move for a moment. I'll get it for you right now." The second son, Li Jingshu, hurried to get his father's official uniform. The two of them helped Li Zhantang put on his official uniform tremblingly, while Li Jingshu helped his father hold his official hat and waited aside. "Do you know why I attach so much importance to Italy?" Seeing that the ship would arrive in a while, Li Zhantang decided to do some on-the-spot testing. Facing Li Zhantang's inquiry, the eldest son Li Jingfang replied, "Father, can you continue to pay goodwill to the country for his use?" "Yes and no." "Father, do you want to show goodwill to the country and show it to the Russians?" "No, neither of them answered correctly, leaving the two of them waiting respectfully for their father's answer. Although he already knew that his two sons could not inherit his legacy, who didn't want his children and grandchildren to be better than others, he just didn't give up. Yet Li Zhantang explained to the two of them, after concealing his inner disappointment, "The purpose of this visit is for the reasons you mentioned, but the main reason is to leave some way out for Gangting, Nishicheng, and Dazan, Wei-Rugi." Li Zhantang's answer made the two of them even more confused. Of course they knew what their father was talking about. Currently, most of the Hui army was deployed on the front line of the Yalu River to watch the Japanese. This time the Italians and Hui army generals such as Wei-Rugi and Nishicheng were visiting. What does it matter? Seeing that his two sons still didn't understand, Li Zhantang had no choice but to explain it to them in detail. "This time I went on a trip. After resigning from the post of governor of Zili and minister of commerce of Biang, it was impossible for me to return. The Queen Mother and the Emperor gave me instructions before my trip that your uncle would be there when I returned. Later, he resigned as the governor of Guangdong and Guangxi and returned to his hometown. After all, Dazan and Gangting had been with me for many years. After I left, he was afraid that his troops would have a hard time, so I visited Italy this time with the intention of borrowing the help of the Italian people to help him. Zhang Muya, at least wait until I return to the country." Okay, Li Zhantang has said it in detail enough. Because he was afraid that when he was away, the imperial court would take the Hui army to his plate. Don't think that this is Li Zhantang's unfounded worry. His family knows his own affairs. The Hui army used to be established based on the past histories of his disciples, but now it is also linked by interests and facing the high-ranking officials in the imperial court and their generous salaries. How many people can't be won over? Li Zhantang was unwilling to surrender the Hui army to others, so he hoped to borrow the help of the Chinese people to give himself a little buffer time. Li Zhantang's words made the two Mr. Li tasted carefully. At this moment, there was a knock on the door, and a voice was heard outside the door. "My lord, the outer port of Rome has arrived." When Li Zhantang and his party walked out, they discovered that the port was crowded with people, all waving the flags of China and Italy. If you observe carefully, you will find that there are very few yellow people among the people greeted at the port, and most of them are Italians. From their cheerful expressions, we can see that they sincerely welcome Li Zantang who is visiting. What's going on? Italians welcome Li Zantang so much. Speaking of which, Italians are definitely the most fond of the Qing dynasty in Europe. Because Italy made a lot of profits from the Qing dynasty and had many profit-making people, it spared no effort to promote the goodness of the Qing dynasty. Of course, the Italian government is also one of them, so there are basically no reports criticizing the Qing dynasty in Italy. They are all praises. In this case, there should not be too many people who have a good impression of the Qing dynasty. According to statistics, the number of people who came to Antium port to greet Li Zantang today reached 30,000. This is the largest number of foreign guests welcomed by the port in the past 10 years, which is enough to explain many problems. Therefore, if the people of the two countries want to like each other, the most important thing is to have interests as the bond. After the Anasto Simon came to a stop, Li Zantang was greeted with cheers as soon as he appeared. With a smile on his face, Li Zantang waved and walked off the ship. This time the Italian government welcomed Li Zantang with the highest standards, and Foreign Minister Boccona walked over to greet him. "Hello, Prime Minister Li, welcome to Rome." Amidst the sound of cameras taking pictures, Boccona held Li Zantang's hand with a smile. Chapter 364 Li Zantang's visit to Italy, Part 2. Of course, the Corriere della Sera in Rome published a front-page photo of Li Zantang shaking hands cordially with Foreign Minister Boccona. The next day, major Italian newspapers also published this photo in a prominent position. However, the newspapers' attention to Li Zantang and his party goes beyond this. All major newspapers sent people to follow Li Zantang and his party to report at any time. For example, His Excellency Li Zantang, a statesman from the Qing dynasty, laughed with Prime Minister Antonio at the welcome dinner and discussed the development of the Far East market. The two parties exchanged views and reached some consensus. In essence, Li Zantang and Antonio were just talking about the weather, and Antonio was concerned about Li Zantang's health. Newspapers rushed to report on Li Zantang because the public liked to see this political elder from the Far East. This may be due to distance. The Far East is too far from Italy, so a lot of news about that can only be known through newspapers and other media. The media was full of praise for it, and even the Qing army's poverty and weakness were interpreted as peace-loving. As for Borneo, the local Chinese are relatively wealthy. Although their living habits are different, most of them are upright and highly praised for their character. Therefore, this also led to people's curiosity about the Qing dynasty, especially if someone guided them. Moreover, Li Zantang was also a politician and prime minister level figure in the Qing dynasty, and had a huge influence on the Qing dynasty, which further aroused the public's interest in Li Zantang. Even what Li Zantang ate, what he said, who he reviewed, etc. Do you feel that Li Zantang has the potential of a superstar? Every move he makes can attract the attention of thousands of people. Well, Li Zantang wouldn't care about this, even if he knew it, because he has many things to pay attention to. At the testing ground of the Beretta Arms Company in Brescia, Li Zantang and his party looked at a newly built Maxim machine. Hiram Stevens Maxim, the company's chief designer, introduced the latest Maxim machine to Li Zantang. Kin machine gun, Prime Minister Li, this is our company's latest machine gun model 1895. The total weight of the gun is 69 kilograms, of which the gun body weighs 26.9 kilograms, the cooling water 4 kilograms, and the tripod weighs 38.1 kilograms. The ammunition supply system of this gun still uses canvas. It is made of a non-dispersible bullet chain. Considering that stray bullets and shrapnel may damage the cooling water sleeve, an additional small round shield is also installed. Maxim pointed at the small buckler behind the muzzle of the gun and introduced it. Then he briefly introduced some other changes. Of course, these were basically told to Li Zantang, and his intention was obvious. Of course, just an introduction is not enough. Actual combat is the best test standard. Mr. Maxim personally operated this heavy machine gun and demonstrated it. Now, we just need to aim at the target in front and pull the trigger on both sides. Following Maxim's words, a roar of heavy machine gun sounded. Da 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 da. 20. or 30 targets standing in front were torn apart by machine guns at a speed visible to the naked eye. Li Zantang, who was watching from the sidelines, was not surprised, but some of the attendants who had never seen Maxim shoot were different. They looked at everything in front of them in stunned silence. After the demonstration, Li Zantang asked, "Mr. Maxim, how much does one of your new electric guns cost?" "One machine gun costs 20,000 lire. If you purchase more than 50, our company can reduce the price to 19,000 lire. In addition, each machine gun comes with 3,000 rounds of ammunition." Facing Li Zantang's inquiry, Maxim immediately gave the price and even offered discounts. Since Maxim was so enthusiastic and this stun gun was really good, Li Zantang also placed an order for 50 of them. Anyway, it was not expensive at more than 200,000 taels, and it was still affordable. Li Zantang then continued to visit Italian industries, including the textile and chemical industries in Milan, where he saw the shocking sight of thousands of people working together. Turin steel and military industries made him feel the charm of heavy industry and the speed of mass production of artillery. As for the shipbuilding industry in Genoa, the launch of a cruiser also left a deep impression on Li Zantang. Of course, during this period, Li Zantang activated his currency capabilities. Rifles, artillery, and even warships were all within Li Zantang's purchase range. Of course, Li Zantang also purchased in appropriate quantities. For example, the warship purchased a 2,000-ton fast cruiser, equipped with 5,000 artillery and rifles. When Li Zantang was observing Italy's strength, he was waiting in his heart for the Italian government's reply. That's right, when the welcome dinner was held, Li Zantang took the opportunity to propose to Prime Minister Antonio that he would like to borrow the help of Italy to provide temporary help to the Hue army. However, this matter was postponed by Antonio on the grounds that it was of great importance and was very likely to change Italy's foreign policy towards the Qing dynasty and needed to be carefully considered. Of course, Li Zantang can also dance with long sleeves. He then said that he understood the concerns of the Kingdom of Italy, so he could walk around first to see Italy's industrialization, and then give him an answer when he comes back. Okay, now I've spent a week wandering around, and I'm almost there. It was now time for Li Zantang to prepare to return to Rome. When he thought about the possible reply from Italy, he suddenly felt uncertain. How will this person respond? Li Zantang was sitting on a float specially prepared for him, looking at the exotic scenery outside the window, and talking a little worried about gains and losses. It stands to reason that he is already 74 years old, which is considered to be a rare age in ancient times. Why is he still so worried about gains and losses? Isn't there a saying that the older you get, the less courageous you become? Li Zantang, a rare man, has held great power for most of his life. This man cannot be without power for a day. He is talking about people like Li Zantang who worry about gains and losses when it comes to power. Purely normal, father. I think heir will accept it. The eldest son Li Jingfang gave his reasons when facing Li Zantang's questioning eyes. I think this person only pays attention to practical benefits. As long as we give enough practical benefits, can this person shirk away? Having said that, how should we give actual benefits now? My father has resigned from the post of Governor of Zili and Minister of Commerce of Biang. It is not easy to give actual benefits now. The second son Li Jingshu asked about his inner thoughts. Yes, it is well known that Italians value practical benefits. The question is what Li Zantang should do to get involved in the court that Italians can't refuse. This is a problem facing Li Jingshu's inquiry. The eldest son Li Jingfang was speechless. Li Zantang saw the performance of his two sons. I'm really not used to having no one with ideas around me. The imperial court is really mean and ungrateful. Apart from his two sons, there is only one Yushimi. Although he is also his staff, he is not good at strategy. Of course, no matter what Li Zantang thought about, the train took him back to Rome. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 365 German-Italian Naval Cooperation, Part 1. Charge. The Italian officer wearing the rank of captain roared and led his soldiers towards the forward position. Push them back. On the other side of the position, the defending German officers and soldiers, led by their officers, were also desperately resisting, relying on the incomplete fortifications. This is not an isolated case. We expand our perspective to a larger area. The Italian army is launching a fierce attack on the defending German army. However, after all, the defenders had the better terrain advantage, and the Italian army's onslaught was slowly pushed back farther away. A group of people wearing military uniforms from both countries were watching the performances of the two sides. Of course, among these star-studded generals, two figures who looked too young were surrounded. William, your country's army is quite elite, but our army is indeed not yet ready. Carlo put down the high-powered telescope in front of him and commented to Kaiser Wilhelm II, who was also observing the exercise. Faced with Carlo's comments, the generals on the Italian side blushed, although they also knew that their army was indeed somewhat different from the German army. How could they remain indifferent when the monarch pointed it out so ruthlessly? As the party being evaluated, the German generals were also somewhat proud after being evaluated by a country's monarch. After all, the Italian king rarely evaluated foreign armies. Faced with Carlo's comments, Wilhelm II, as the Kaiser, said after leaving the high-powered telescope, "We have all seen the progress of your army. I believe that your army will perform even better before long." Well, Emperor William can do business with each other. Of course, the performance of the Italian army has improved a lot. In recent years, Italy no longer sends its most elite guards, but instead sends troops with average ratings in the army. Of course, because of this change in the army, Italy has performed poorly in military exercises between Germany and Italy in recent years. But this performance of the army, including Carlo, can be seen in its efforts to change. Instead of trying to cover up your shortcomings, you should try to identify problems and rectify them. However, in this army exercise, there were a few people who seemed a bit conspicuous. No way. Among a group of army generals, several navy generals do feel a little strange. Of course, two of these naval generals look a little different, because anyone who knows them will be surprised. These two leaders of the German and Italian navies are having a debate that has nothing to do with the exercise. Rear Admiral Tirpitz, I do not agree with your views. The Navy is an offensive service. Although it can preserve its strength by staying in the port, it will lose strategic initiative. This will also lead to the disadvantage in the contest with the enemy. If you are at a disadvantage, the difficulty of regaining the strategic initiative will increase exponentially. Admiral Yeagia, the Italian Navy Minister, is refuting Rear Admiral Tirpitz's remarks. Although one of them is a Rear Admiral and the other an Admiral, they both have similar statuses and are both heads of the Navy of various countries. Therefore, the conversation between the two can also be seen as the development policies of the two navies. Admiral Yeagia, I can only partially agree with your point of view. The Navy is indeed an offensive service. Since the British Nelson spirit was proposed, navies of all countries have been learning from its concepts. But I think that the Navy cannot only have an offensive concept. Among them, the actual situation also needs to be considered. For example, the total tonnage of our Navy is only 300,000, and the enemy who has declared war on our country has a total naval tonnage of 700,000. In this case, it is very difficult for the Navy to preserve its strength and rely on coastal defenses to resist enemy harassment. Reasonable. Well, at this time Rear Admiral Tirpitz's fleet theory has not yet taken shape, but it has begun to take shape. When it is at a disadvantage, its idea of preserving the strength of the fleet can already be seen. However, after communicating with Admiral Yeagia, his idea obviously failed to be recognized by his Italian counterparts even after Major General Tirpitz explained. Admiral Yeagia still did not agree. Of course, the concepts between the two are different, and there are also reasons for national defense needs. For example, the German Navy has a short coastline due to its geographical location, so the theory of fleet preservation has a basis. Your own fleet is weak. In order to contain your opponent, you need to avoid fighting with it and allow the enemy to use more naval tonnage on your own fleet to avoid the enemy navy from harassing your country's coast. However, this theory may be suitable for Germany, but it is definitely not suitable for Italy. Italy's land is like a boot stretching towards the Mediterranean Sea, which also results in its long coastline. If Italy adopts the idea of defending ships, it will cost Italy too much to build coastal defense fortifications, which Italy cannot afford. Defense main battery. In view of the high cost of building forts, Italy took another path. That is, except for a few important port cities, the Italian Navy's funding was biased towards shipbuilding, hoping to use its own naval warships to delay the enemy point. In addition, in terms of shipbuilding concepts, compared with the German Navy, which focuses on armor protection, Italian shipbuilding focuses more on the speed of warships. From the perspective of the Italian Navy, the speed of battleships is a crucial factor. With the advantage of speed, the Navy has more tactics available. Regardless of whether it is an advantage or a disadvantage, speed is the priority goal among the three elements of a battleship. As for the German and Italian navies, perhaps it is precisely due to various differences that the two navies have different concepts. The leaders in charge of the two navies also gradually lost their voices due to ideological reasons, which also attracted the attention of others, too. Generals have different naval concepts, which can actually change over time. For example, after their strength exceeds that of potential opponents, can their ideas remain the same as before? Carlo came forward to smooth things over, and Kaiser Wilhelm naturally took over. Carlo, you are right. The Navy also changes its philosophy according to its own changes. Of course, how to measure this also needs to be carefully considered. Well, the words of the two monarchs immediately put an end to the dispute between the two, and of course, the more important thing was to make them remember the reason for coming here. They did not come here to learn from the experience of army exercises, and no one had the time or leisure. It is the navies of the two countries seeking cooperation. To be fair, it is more the German Navy seeking help. Yes, although Germany has not yet come up with its first naval construction bill, the German Navy is expanding. The 4 Brandenburg-class battleships can be regarded as the beginning of Germany's development of the Navy. Although the performance of this battleship is not comparable to that of the Turin class that created the pre-dreadnought era, it is still a good start. After the 4 Brandenburg-class battleships were outdated after being built, the German Navy came up with the Caesar Friedrich third-class battleship plan. Although this class of battleships is much better than the Brandenburg class, not to mention the new Italian battleships, even the Turin class is superior. If this German battleship had any redeeming qualities, it was a large number of rapid-firing guns in addition. Compared with the previous Frederick third-class water rapid-fire cannon, the main gun was also the largest caliber rapid-fire gun at the time, 240mm. The current Frederick third class has 4 main guns with a caliber of 350mm gun. This was also affected by the naval battle between China, Italy, and Japan in Sino-Japanese War. Large caliber main guns still have enough deterrence, so Germany is also taking the path of ensuring caliber this time. Kaiser Wilhelm II personally invited Carlo. Naturally, he was still dissatisfied with his own naval warships and wanted to learn from the experienced Italian Navy. As for the naval cooperation that Germany is seeking, Carlo certainly has his own ideas, but how to cooperate will have to wait until he talks about it. Chapter 366 German-Italian Naval Cooperation, Part 2. The army exercises continued, but the figures of the monarchs of the two countries did not appear again, and neither did the figures of senior officers of the two navies located 12 kilometers west of the Altmark training ground. There is a manor of the Hohenzollern family, where the two monarchs and several naval officers from the two countries are all present. Of course, with so many people here, it is impossible to come here for vacation, so under the witness of the two monarchs, the German-Italian naval technical cooperation negotiations began. Everyone, these are some of our country's views on naval cooperation. Please correct me. Rear Admiral Tirpitz, who is called the Chief of the General Staff of the German Navy, but is actually the head of the Navy, presented the German cooperation plan at the beginning. Admiral Yager and others took the plan and read it quickly, while the German naval admirals waited silently. The cooperation plan of the German naval counterparts covers several aspects, such as joint maritime training, military and technical exchanges, and equipment research and development. Of course, among these cooperations, What Germany values most is warship design and military exchanges. Needless to say, warship design. German warship designers should all be disbanded. In later generations, the wasteful tonnage design of German warships that was ridiculed by military fans has become an ancestral skill point, and indeed, if we don't talk about what didn't appear later, we can't talk about the two battleships of the German Navy at present. The Brandenburg class also has a strong armored ship style, and its speed and firepower are far behind the battleships of the same era. As for the epoch-making Turin class, there is absolutely no comparison point. If the Brandenburg class can be explained by the fact that it appeared at the same time as the Turin class and did not pay attention to the arrival, then there is nothing to defend the Frederick III class this time. The firepower of the Frederick III class has increased. The 350mm main gun is not behind the battleships of other countries. However, its maximum speed of 17.5 knots should be regarded as the second slowest except for the American battleships that love to make iron turtles. In terms of armor, although the main armor belt of the Frederick III class has a thickness of 228 mm 300mm, the armor belt is very narrow and cannot provide sufficient protection. In addition, one more thing needs to be said. With its endurance of 2000 nautical miles / 9 knots, it does not seem inconsistent to call it a coastal defense battleship. That's right. I don't know what the German Navy thinks. The endurance of this class is a full 2500 nautical miles lower than the previous Brandenburg class. Of course, this cannot all be blamed on warship designers. After all, the Navy is responsible for building whatever warships it needs. But judging from the design of the battleship, the needs of the German Navy are indeed a mystery. But when the German Navy colleagues looked at the Italian battleships, they would definitely be filled with emotion. As for military exchanges, this is even simpler. Over the years, the Italian Navy has accumulated a lot of combat experience through expeditions to the east and west. At the same time, the uninterrupted battles have also allowed it to obtain first-hand battleship information, making it easier for it to see the development of battleships. So the German Navy lacks this experience, so they hope to gain this experience from their Italian colleagues. The Italian side quickly read the German cooperation plan. Everyone, your country's cooperation plan is very good, and it is very conducive to the naval cooperation between your two countries, Admiral Yagel praised the other party as soon as he opened his mouth, but then he changed the subject. However, we think there are a few points that have been poorly considered. Faced with Admiral Yagel's somewhat doubtful words, Major General Tirpitz immediately asked, "What aspect are you talking about?" First of all, in terms of technical cooperation, our country believes that the naval technical cooperation between the two countries should continue. For example, the previous research between your country and our country on armor steel is a very good example. In fact, from this aspect, we can also expand to we have good room for cooperation in the research and development of new artillery, as well as technical breakthroughs in ship power, as well as communication technology. Admiral Yagel's words aroused thoughts on the German side. There is indeed much room for improvement in technical cooperation. For example, Germany is very coveted in radio communication technology. This is equipment that every seagoing ship needs to be equipped with. It is a bit incredible that Italy is willing to use it this time. However, this technical cooperation is also an example of what is easier said than done. All the technologies needed by the navies of the two countries are basically in the hands of various supporting companies. If you want to share them with everyone, this will not be possible without sufficient exchange of interests. In addition, apart from this technical cooperation, the different needs of the two navies will also cause technical differences. For example, I think bigger cannons are better, so we should strive for larger calibers, and I think future warships will have thicker armor, so penetration will be more important, so the barrels will need to be longer. Logically speaking, both are right. So who should you listen to? So this technical cooperation sounds good, but it is not easy to achieve. Even for the armored steel project, which was the most successful cooperation, Krupp still believed that it had suffered a loss. The funds and manpower provided by Italy were too much compared to Italy, but it was not fair that it could still get so many benefits. This matter was suppressed by the Kaiser because of the special friendship between the two countries. As for technical cooperation. There are many things that need to be coordinated, so we can't decide now. Major General Tirpitz thought about it and returned to Italy. It doesn't matter. In fact, I think we can cooperate on projects that both parties agree on. It doesn't necessarily require cooperation on both sides. Admiral Yagia behaved very generously and did not mind Germany's hesitation. This also shows Italy's urgency for technical cooperation, because the Italian Navy knows that in this era of rapid technological advancement, if Italy wants to not fall behind technologically, it cannot do so on its own. The Italian Navy's annual research funding is simply not enough. Therefore, at this time, it has become an important topic for the Italian Navy to work with the navies of other countries to engage in technological research and development. The German Navy, which is preparing to vigorously develop its own navy, has become the target of Italy's hope for cooperation. And the German Navy just wants to ask for itself. How long will it wait if it does not take the opportunity to propose cooperation matters? After hearing Italy's proposal to prioritize cooperation that both parties were interested in, Germany also expressed its agreement. Of course, the two parties came to talk about more than just technical cooperation. Later, the two parties had exchanges on joint exercises and the design of warships that the German Navy was most concerned about. Of course, during the exchange, Admiral Yagia bluntly pointed out that, after observing the two German battleships, he expressed doubts about whether their strategic goals were consistent. At this time, Major General Tirpitz took the opportunity to propose that Italy send shipbuilding technicians to provide technical assistance to several German shipyards. Italy recognizes this and can provide help to the German shipbuilding industry. Of course, no matter how the German and Italian navies talk about it, it will not affect the friendship between the two monarchs. Chapter 367 German-Italian Naval Cooperation, Part 2. William, how long has it been since we last met? It's been almost 7 years. Yes, 7 years. As the two navies talk about cooperation, the two monarchs are also talking, but they are talking about friendship. And we talked about it in the garden. Carlo and William II were sitting on a bench like ordinary people, holding wine glasses and looking at the bonfire and the cooks busy at the grill. Carlo, I still remember the first time we met. Your remarks about the role of the Navy attracted me at that time, and after talking with you, I felt that many of our ideas coincided with each other. William II held a glass of red wine and sighed. Later, I watched you become more and more proficient in using the Navy. It was a good move to occupy the Borneo colony. With that said, William raised his glass and gestured to Carlo. Thanks, Carlo retorted and took a sip. William, I'm a little confused as to why your country's navy is developing so slowly. I remember we talked at the time that there are fewer and fewer unclaimed lands in this world, and the lack of sufficient naval power will make it difficult for your country's influence to radiate out. Germany also needs land under the sun. Carlo's words made Kaiser Wilhelm look bitter. Carlo, there is nothing we can do about this. You know, it is difficult to change the stubborn ideas in the country. Although I seem to be able to do everything now, I also need to consider the needs of the domestic people. In the past, our country had the need for overseas territory is not yet urgent, so the demand for the Navy is not high. Although I very much recognize the role of the Navy, I'm only a monarch, not a god. Sometimes I really envy you. At least you don't have to be so restrained. Okay, yes, William II was very envious of Carlo. Because Carlo used the Navy to gamble all his moves, he bought Italy the Far East market and a rich colony in one fell swoop. And of course it also brought him sweet power, especially the colony called Borneo. It was the land under the sun that Germany dreamed of. The annual income of nearly 80 million marks coupled with its excellent location makes Germany greedy. Annoyingly speaking, not one of Germany's colonies is currently losing money. Of course, this has a lot to do with the fact that German colonies are all in underdeveloped Africa, but it can also explain many problems. William, there's nothing I can do about it. It was just a coincidence. Everything was a matter of luck. After listening to Carlo's defense, William II waved his hand. My friend, I'm not jealous of your luck, I'm just lamenting myself. Sometimes I keep thinking about it. It might be a lot better if I wasn't so forward looking and backward looking, maybe. So, William II looked at Carlo in front of him, and then whispered, "By the way, Carlo, I talked with Ferdinand, and he also very much agrees with the role of the navy." Carlo didn't know how to answer William's words. Looking at Carlo, who was silent, William II said seriously, "Carlo, I think the relationship between your country and Austria-Hungary needs to be improved. You are all allies of our country, and the improvement of the relationship between your two countries is also very beneficial to you." Carlo could see that William II was sincere in what he said, and he wanted Austria-Hungary and Italy to reach reconciliation point. Of course, Carlo hopes so too. But reaching complete reconciliation with Austria-Hungary was never that easy. Even if Carlo himself married a Habsburg princess, it would not be easy to promote reconciliation between the two countries, because the two countries still have considerable disputes over territory, history, and even interests. Although the two countries have currently shelved their disputes over the Tyrol region, everyone knows that if the issue of Tyrol's ownership cannot be resolved, sooner or later it will become the trigger for hostility between the two countries and even war. As for history, the Habsburg family has ruled Italy for a long time, and its wealth plundering of Italy is not small. It has caused a lot of public dissatisfaction. It is difficult for Italians to have too much favorable impression of the Habsburg family. In addition, in terms of interests, the main point of contact between the two countries is in the Balkans. In this region, the two countries have gradually shifted from cooperating against Russia to going their separate ways. Austria-Hungary even formed a tacit understanding with Russia from time to time, which made Italy extremely annoyed. Of course, this situation is also related to the fact that Italy has gained too much benefits from the Balkans. In the Macedonia region, which all Balkan countries are concerned about, Italy supported Bulgaria to seize most of the northern Macedonia region. In addition, Italy itself also took over the entire Albanian region. Kosovo is included in the Albanian region. It can be said that Italy's actions directly disturbed the situation in the Balkans. Bulgaria's greatly increased strength has attracted the fear of the Balkan countries, but considering Italy behind it, they dare not move yet. Greece saw that the Ottomans were defeated in front of Italy and Bulgaria, so they wanted to try their skills, but they were beaten violently. If the British had not stopped them, the Ottomans could have beaten Athens in one go. As for Serbia, it is even more difficult. Since Bulgaria and Italy occupy Albania and northern Macedonia, its southward expansion route to take revenge on the Ottomans has been blocked. It is surrounded by European countries who want to use the Ottoman pagan country to attack itself. Breakpoint. For this reason, Serbia's diplomatic environment has deteriorated abnormally. It is surrounded by the ambitious Austro-Hungarian Empire in the northeast and west. Bosnia and Herzegovina has been annexed by Austria-Hungary, and Italy, Montenegro and Bulgaria are in the south. Of course, there is also a small border with Romania. Among Serbia's current neighbors, except for Montenegro, they all need to implement defensive policies, so Serbia is in urgent need of thighs. Fortunately, Serbia is lucky enough to have two thighs to hug. The first is Russia, its traditional ally. As a country that helped it become independent, Serbia has always been regarded by Serbia as its strongest ally to ensure its security, especially after Bulgaria seized most of Macedonia. After becoming friendly with Italy, more diplomatic help came from Russia. The other thigh is the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Yes, you read that right, it is the Austro-Hungarian Empire. In the final analysis, the most important thing between countries is interests, and it is also interests that promote the rapid development of relations between the two countries. Italy's disruption in the Balkans caused losses to Austria-Hungary's interests. Although Austria-Hungary also benefited from it, the annexation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, Austria-Hungary's influence in the Balkans was essentially taken away by Italy. There is a saying that goes well, if you make little money out of it, you will suffer a loss, let alone this. Therefore, the relationship between Austria-Hungary and Italy was also damaged due to the Balkans. Of course, for Italy, its territory in the Balkans must not be given up. Kosovo's non-ferrous metal mines are the cornerstone of Italian industrialization, and no one can make it give up. In view of the increasingly bad relations between Italy and Austria-Hungary, the Kaiser, as an ally of the two countries, wanted to help both parties. Of course, From another aspect, Germany does this for its own interests. If 10 years ago Germany positioned Italy as a pawn to contain France, then now, Germany positions Italy as a pawn to contain France and an important ally for Germany's expansion in the world. Point in the final analysis, it is only when Italy's strength has grown that it can gain the attention of all countries, including its allies. William, if you have time, you can call Ferdinand, and let's get together. Carlos. Words made William II smile. Both of them understood what they meant. Italy was willing to talk to Austria-Hungary. Then, when we have some free time, let's come to Germany and try our pork knuckles and dark beer. No problem. The meat is roasted. Come and have a taste. Carlo. Okay, let me try it. The pleasant conversation between the two monarchs also represented the negotiations between the two navies. Happy to work with. Happy to work with. Major General Tirpitz and General Yagia took a group photo with the cooperation letter signed by each of them in their hands. The cooperation letter stipulates a 5-year cooperation plan between the Italian and German navies. In this plan, Italy and Germany cooperate in 8 major categories and 29 subcategories, including artillery, ammunition, boilers, ship power, warship design, and radio communications. The cooperation is mainly about the complementary advantages of the two navies and their efforts to strengthen their own navies. It is also worth mentioning that the cooperation plan does not stipulate that it is only between the two countries, which was specifically requested by Germany. Obviously, this left a door open for Austria-Hungary, and Italy knew it well. However, with the development of the Italian Navy in recent years, Italy does not believe that the Austro-Hungarian Navy, which has been out of date in recent years, can still pose a threat to itself. This is the self-confidence of a powerful navy. The Italian Navy has finally developed this self-confidence over the years. Chapter 368 Libya Railway Problem. The sun shines on the desolate land, making it so hot that people can't lift their spirits. The cobblestones on the road are not much worse than the sand on the side, and they are all good for barbecue. Not to mention the railway track beside it. The heat seemed to want to melt it. But even at such a hot moment, there are still people here. Every day we patrol to check whether the road spikes are secure. We must not be careless, otherwise something big will happen. An older road guard was talking to the younger one next to him. The younger one tugged on the scarf that wrapped his entire head, trying to untie it. Don't move. Don't open it, no matter how much it simmers. But it's really hot and stuffy. I feel uncomfortable. Maybe I'm suffering from heat stroke. The young man looked like he was new here, and he didn't understand the power of the North African desert at all. Bonnie, hold on. There is a house where you can rest 2 kilometers away. There is water and a bed there. It's very comfortable. The man named Bonnie also knew that he couldn't lie down at this time, so he answered bravely, okay Barondo, I think I can hold on for a while. The two of them braved the hot sun and walked towards the resting place. Barondo said. In order to distract him, Barondo kept talking to Bonnie. Bonnie, where is your hometown? The town of Solca, Sardinia. Where is that? 23 kilometers east of Cagliari. We are very famous for tomatoes. Only the paella with Solca tomatoes is the authentic Sardinian paella. Thinking of the paella in my hometown, I want to drool. Tell you, the paella in my hometown is absolutely delicious. We first pour some olive oil into the pot, stir fry the squid, shrimp, and clams, then sprinkle a little sea salt, then add tomatoes, onions, and garlic and continue to fry, and then add rice. Add a large bowl of water and cook for an hour. Add some lemon juice and green onions before serving. I like to eat the clams inside the most. The clams are full of juice, 1 bite at a time. Very delicious. Bonnie was beaming as he spoke and kept licking his dry lips. It seemed that he really missed the delicacies of his hometown. Okay, we're here. Barondo opened a door with Bonnie and led him in. This was originally a cavalry barracks. Due to security reasons, a platoon of cavalry was stationed here before. Later, after the security improved, the army left. We took over this place, and it can be used as a resting point for inspections. Barondo said and pushed open the window made of thick wood. Look, you can see more than 10 kilometers around here. The scenery is pretty good. No wonder the army chose this place. The cool and windy environment gave Pony some relief. After taking off the scarf, which was no different from an Arab headscarf, Boney looked at the hot scene outside and replied casually, "Not bad, just." As he was talking, a whistle sounded, and a train pulled goods at high speed. Barondo took a quick look, and recognized it accurately. This is an IC Type 3 heavy-duty steam locomotive. The two locomotives have a combined power of 4,000 horsepower and basically carry 40 freight cars. It is really painful to drive this train on this hot day. Barondo was right. When the train got closer, the long carriages behind the two locomotives were filled with iron ore. This train of iron ore weighs about 1,000 tons and can be seen at least 10 or 20 times a day. Barondo, can I ask how many years have you been here? Let me think about it. I was transferred from Naples in August 1891, so it has been exactly 5 years. Barondo gestured with 5 fingers and said the time of his arrival. Bonnie looked at Barondo, who looked full of vicissitudes of life, and continued to ask, "Then do you regret it?" "What's there to regret? Although staying here for 5 years makes me look 10 years older, the salary is high. I don't believe that you didn't come here for the high salary. Besides, you are much better now than I was then." At that time, the railway had not yet been fully connected, and it was still dangerous to patrol in the field. At that time, we still had to carry rifles for self-defense. We were even more tired, and the food was not good. The bread was only black bread. But I heard that we were in Valk at that time. I have been besieged by indigenous people and dozens of people died. Barondo's words made Boney very interested. However, the indigenous people were not happy either. The military was furious at that time. During the pursuit, more than 200 thugs were arrested, and more than 300 were killed. What happened to the thugs who were caught? What else can they do? Those who have lives in their hands will be hanged, and those who have no lives in their hands will be dragged to build railways and mines. They will spend the rest of their lives to atone for their sins. So, this place was still dangerous before. It's not too dangerous. I haven't heard any news about attacks in the past 3 years. Maybe those natives who dared to be hostile to us died in the desert. Time passed slowly as the two chatted. The desert at dusk, with the long railway passing through it, made people feel comfortable. As the night deepened, the tired two people soon began to snore. The two of them could sleep peacefully, but some people couldn't. Belumaba, the general manager of the Libyan Railway Company, did not feel sleepy at all. While looking at the information in front of him, the Jafra section of the railway has sunk seriously and needs major repairs. The Sodagobi section of the railway has suffered serious damage and needs to be renovated. The loss of the entire section of the railway is twice as high as expected. It is expected that the railway will be renovated in 4 to 5 years. This how should I tell Rome? What troubled Mr. Balloon was that technicians from the railway company discovered that the South Railway in Libya, which specializes in carrying iron ore, was in serious wear and tear and its service life would be greatly reduced. Well, it seems that when designing the railway, Italian technicians underestimated the environmental difficulties, which led to such serious consequences. As a qualified railway company general manager, Bilumaba certainly knew the seriousness of this matter. But you really can't blame him for this. Although the railway cost as much as 118 million lire, the design was also expected to have a transportation capacity of 3.5-4.5 million tons of iron ore a year. However, due to the high quality of Sapphire iron ore and its affordable price tariff factor, the demand for its iron ore has increased significantly. The Sabha mining area has also increased production. One more thing to say here is that the Sabha mining area is currently the most modern mining area in Italy, and it has basically achieved all electric production. This is also due to the discovery of a small coal mine 60 kilometers south of the mining area. Although it is just some lignite, it is more than enough to generate electricity. As the output of the Sabha mining area increases significantly, the railway company must also increase transportation volume. Since last year, the railway company's iron ore transportation volume has increased month by month. Last month, according to statistics from the Sirte port, the port shipped 510,000 tons of iron ore. This is an effort to achieve an annual output of 6 million tons. Therefore, the railway was seriously damaged, and it was really not something he could decide. But no matter what he did, this was not going to be easy. Because the blame shifting problem is not unique to China, Italy will not lag behind either. Balumeb's headache may follow him for a long time. Chapter 369 Republic of Crete. There is something unusual about Heraklion today. The residents have complicated expressions and are talking quietly among themselves. If someone they don't know breaks in, they should immediately separate and go their separate ways. If the local residents do this, of course something big will happen. Just last night, the secret police of the Republic arrested more than 20 government officials, including Deputy Speaker Bergen, Education Minister Sparks, and Agriculture Minister Besham, on the grounds that they were running a secret political party with the intention of overthrowing the government by force. How could such a big event not surprise the public? Whether they believed it or not, this incident made people stare with their eyes wide open, waiting for the follow-up results. Of course, for ordinary people, they can only pay attention to the development of the matter. They are not even qualified to know the truth of the whole matter. But for some people, it's a different story. As long as you pay attention to the daily remarks of the more than 20 people who were arrested, you will find that these people are pro-Greek. Yes, the group of people close to Greece were also the former Unionists. Even though Crete has established a republic and is no longer the same country as Greece, there is still a group of people in Crete who believe that Crete's independence is a mistake and is creating division in front of the Greeks. It would be best if Crete turned its back on darkness and merged with Greece into one country. In fact, these people have always been the targets of severe suppression by President Solari and Parliament Speaker Hibuk. Of course, it is very rare to directly arrest them like this. Because these people have a popular base, you need to think twice before moving against them. Of course, another reason is that these people not only have connections with Greece, but also know how to leverage their strength and have connections with Britain and France. In the final analysis, Crete was in a good position, although Italy came out on top and exerted sufficient influence on the new Cretan regime. But we must also note that under pressure from Britain, France and other countries, Italy did not even have a single soldier stationed in Crete, which is also very revealing. This time, in addition to the support of Italy behind them, the attack on these pro-Greek factions was also due to the fact that Greece was defeated by the Ottomans. After Greece declared war on the Ottomans, these pro-Greek factions jumped up and down, trying to push the Republic of Crete to join the war. These people don't care that there are only about 8,000 people in Crete, including the military and police. Even if they are mobilized, it is only about 20,000 people, and they want to join the war. As the name suggests, it's time for Osman to pay his blood debt with blood. Fortunately, President Solari and Speaker of Parliament Hibuk, both of whom had great foresight, rejected his rude motion. Then Greece's performance was really ugly. It was defeated by the Ottomans and signed a treaty of defeat. This made the pro-Greek faction injured for a while, and the most direct consequence was that the number of people who supported them dropped by nearly 10,000. As for the arrest of the pro-Greek faction this time, it was also carried out by President Solari's most trusted secret police after they relaxed their vigilance. The effect was very good. None of the 21 targets escaped. This time the secret police made a great contribution. At the center of many people's discussions, President Solari and Parliament Speaker Hibuk were asking questions to the people in front of them. This person is Lieutenant Colonel Bilal Diaf, head of the secret police. Have they all recruited? Parliament Speaker Hibuk asked the Lieutenant Colonel anxiously. He couldn't help but be impatient, as this matter would become a scandal and would set him on fire. But it won't work if you don't do it. If you don't take advantage of this opportunity, it will be difficult to have such a good opportunity in the future. Currently, 9 people have confessed, and 4 others have wavered. If we work harder, we should be able to capture them. The remaining 8 people are still gritting their teeth and won't let go. We are working hard. After listening to Lieutenant Colonel Diaf's answer, Solari looked at his most trusted subordinate and spoke. So have Bergen, Sparks, and Besham confessed? It is obvious that what President Solari asked is the key question. These 3 are the leaders of the pro-Greek faction. As long as they confess, The people will believe it. Point faced with Solari's question, Lieutenant Colonel Dyanuff answered with some hesitation. Besham confessed, Bergen and Sparks have not. Hearing Lieutenant Colonel Dyanuff's answer, Parliament Speaker, he became anxious. You have to speed up. No matter what method you use, we only need Bergen and Sparks to plead guilty. We can only give you 3 more seconds at most. You only have 3 days. If we can't deal with these 2 people, then we won't be able to end it. Hibbok was already naked enough and asked Lieutenant Colonel Dyanuff to use any method, as long as the result did not concern the process. As the head of the secret police, Lieutenant Colonel Dyanuff knew a lot of tricks, and this was letting go of his restrictions. Don't worry, President and Speaker, I will make them agree within 2 days. Others also need to confess. If there are still people who won't let go at that time, then they will commit suicide out of fear of guilt. President Salary then added, point it can be seen that these 2 leaders of the Republic of Crete have dark hearts. There was no way the 2 of them were not so upright originally, and after tasting the sweetness of power, they would use any means to protect their own rights. Moreover, there are only 200,000 people in Crete. It is not that easy to produce politicians here. Point. But before the 3 of them could continue their conversation, the secretary's voice came from outside the door. Your Excellency, the British Ambassador Hawley and the French Ambassador Moreira have requested to meet with you. Why so fast, Speaker? Hibbok was surprised. 4. Now, let's leave through the side door. Okay, let's leave first. The Speaker and Lieutenant Colonel Dyanuff did not hesitate and immediately went out through the side door first. Point. As for President Salary, he rubbed his sore cheeks and replied, invite them in. Within 2 minutes, the 2 ambassadors from Britain and France came to him with angry faces. Your Excellency, President Salary, we need an explanation as to why your country suddenly arrested more than 20 government officials, including Deputy Speaker Bergen, Education Minister Sparks, and Agriculture Minister Besham. Is this a conspiracy? Asterisk asterisk asterisk. We need your answer. Faced with the British and French ambassadors who questioned him from the very beginning, Salary did not dare to attack these 2 people, even if he was angry in his heart, because he couldn't offend any of the British and French people behind him. As a small country with a population of only 200,000, Crete dared to offend these 2 representatives of the great powers. 2 ambassadors, I think this is a misunderstanding. Our government also has evidence for arresting them. According to our understanding, Deputy Speaker Bergen, Education Minister Sparks, and Agriculture Minister Besham had previously been arrested for our country did not participate in the Greco-Turkish War, but as complaints. They believed that the government should not stay out of the matter, so they wanted to overthrow the government. Of course our government could not let them succeed, so we took them down preemptively. Although Salary gave an explanation, the 2 of them didn't believe it at all. Your Excellency, President Salary, no matter what crime you commit, you need evidence. We only believe in evidence. Please come up with evidence. Sorry, the evidence can't be shown to you 2 yet. It needs to be completed before the investigation is completed. Your Excellency, are we like 3-year-old children? I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, but please believe that the evidence will be shown to you too. You need to remember your words. Will do. The 2 ambassadors left again with angry faces. Damn it, Dyanuff needs to move faster. Chapter 370. Spain purchases ships. The political purge in Crete actually came from the support of Italy, in addition to local vested interests. Otherwise, they would not dare to do this if they were given the courage. Point. According to Italian Foreign Minister Gemini Boccona, for the sake of its own health, the Republic of Crete needs to regularly clean up its own viruses. As for what are viruses, this is a matter of opinion. Point. Anyway, as long as Italy does not station troops in Crete, it is impossible for Britain and France to take action. Don't think that Italy alone is afraid of the strength of Britain and France. Britain and France are also afraid of Italy. Italy's brilliant record in recent years has made people pay attention to it. Point. Therefore, the people of Crete are a bit sad to say that they can only fight within the scope stipulated by the 3 kingdoms, including Greece, who can only become a pawn. Point. But the fate of Crete can only be like this. This is the tragedy of a small country. Unless huge changes occur, this can only be accepted. Point of course, Italy still pays relatively good attention to Crete, but currently in Rome, another thing is attracting more attention. Your Excellency Prime Minister, according to our preliminary investigation, there are two main reasons why the service life of the Sisu railway is not as good as expected. First, due to the desert Gobi terrain, the temperature difference between day and night is large. Under the principle of thermal expansion and contraction, the losses increased. In addition, due to the impact of sandstorms and strong winds, the railways also suffered heavy losses. Transportation Secretary Sten Pedersen is in the Prime Minister's office, explaining their department's investigation to Prime Minister Antonio. In fact, most of this comes from the Libyan Railway's own investigation, and only a small amount is added by the Ministry of Transport itself. Point of course, Balumaba's report caused a sensation in Rome, and the importance of the Sub-Saharan mine to Italy cannot be overstated. So when he heard that the railways might only have half their design life, the Prime Minister needed an explanation, one that would allow him to speak to the king. So, it's caused by environmental factors. Yes and no. Environmental factors account for a large part of the reason, but more importantly, we underestimated the impact of the desert Gobi terrain on the railway. This aspect is the responsibility of our Ministry of Transportation, and we are willing to assume it. Transportation Secretary Pedersen's words did not attract Antonio's approval. Investigation alone is not enough. What I need is a response. This matter is not that easy to solve. It cost a huge amount of 118 million to build. I think you also understand how important the Sub-Saharan mine is to the kingdom. When Antonio said this, he looked at Transportation Secretary Pedersen in front of him and said solemnly, the government will also send people to investigate. If there are human factors, it may be very bad. Obviously, Antonio is warning that someone needs to be responsible for this kind of thing. Of course, it might be much better if we can fix the problem before it is too late. Faced with the Prime Minister's questioning, Transportation Secretary Pedersen felt that the sweat on his back had wet his clothes. The Prime Minister is right. I returned to the Ministry of Transport and immediately conducted a self-examination and self-certification. In addition, considering that the losses of the Sisu Railway were too great, our Ministry of Transport made two remedial plans, and I hope the Prime Minister will review them. With that said, Pedersen took out two documents from his briefcase. Antonio took the document, and the word Sisu Railway Remediation Plan were printed on the cover. Antonio placed the two documents on the table. I don't want to see it. Now I want to hear it from you. Facing the Prime Minister's request, Pedersen dared to say no. He said directly, according to the plan of our Ministry of Transportation, the remediation of the Sisu Railway can be carried out from two aspects. One is temporary emergency, and the other is once and for all. What's the difference between the two? Faced with the Prime Minister's inquiry, Pedersen quickly answered, one way is to spend less money, and the other is to spend more money. The way to spend less money is to reinforce the seriously damaged road sections. According to our inspection, of the more than 800 kilometers of the Sisu Railway, of which more than 200 kilometers need to be remedied, due to factors such as quicksand and desert, these railway sections need to be reinforced, and the fixed green belts on both sides also need to be expanded. Of course, more importantly, the railway carrying capacity is best down to the design range. Hearing this, Antonio stopped him with a wave of his hand. It goes without saying that the railway's carrying capacity cannot be reduced and needs to be increased. This plan goes without saying. This first plan was directly killed, and it seemed that there was only another way to come up with. But thinking about the funds required for this method, Pedersen gritted his teeth and said, there is another way to solve this problem, which is to add a double line. Let the Sisu Railway operate on two lines. Double line. Yes, Prime Minister, this problem can be solved by using double tracking. We can use anti-wear rails for double tracking. In fact, our Ministry of Transportation is already cooperating with steel plants to develop such rails suitable for desert environments. In addition, double tracking can also to increase the transportation volume of iron ore. According to the railway operation schedule in the past 3 years, it can be increased to at least 7 million tons. Even if the lines are renovated in the future, it will not be reduced much. In addition, we can also use the construction of double lines to deal with certain hazards. It's quite cost effective to reinforce the area. Pedersen talked endlessly about the benefits of building a double line, saying that building a double line would solve the current problem once and for all. After listening to his story, Antonio asked, how much will it cost to build the double line? According to the preliminary estimate of our Ministry of Transport, it should be between 70 to 80 million lire, as if he was afraid that this fee would scare the Prime Minister. Pedersen later explained, this is considered very low cost considering that we have already made roadbed and that rail transportation can be used along the route. After listening to Pedersen's defense, Antonio walked around the room and seemed to be mumbling something. Then he glanced at the Secretary of Transportation and said, okay, I understand, you go back first. These words made Pedersen breathe a sigh of relief. He had passed the test for the time being. Next, a thorough investigation was needed within the Ministry of Transportation. For such a serious mistake, someone must be punished. After Pedersen left, Antonio thought about the words of the Minister of Transport. 70 or 80 million lire was not a small amount. If what he said was really achieved, it would not be impossible. Maybe he could discuss it with the king. Thinking of this, the Prime Minister picked up the phone. Prime Minister, the king has summoned you for something. The secretary suddenly knocked on the door to report. Okay, I understand. Prepare the car now, soon. The Prime Minister arrived at the palace. When he arrived at the palace, he saw that in addition to the king, the foreign minister was also there. After Antonio arrived, King Carlo spoke. Prime Minister, we just received news that Spain is asking us to purchase warships. Chapter 371, Bartering for Ships. Part 1. Your Majesty, what is going on? The Prime Minister was a little confused by Carlo's words. It wasn't that Antonio couldn't understand, but that he knew what kind of person the king was, so he also knew that the king's words were not just literal. Let the foreign secretary tell you. At Carlo's signal, Bacona spoke. Our embassy in Madrid received a summons from the Spanish foreign minister, who wanted to purchase a new battleship from our country. Of course, the foreign secretary's words were more than that, otherwise Carlo would not have needed to signal. Then Bacona continued to explain the reason why Spain purchased the warship island. This matter still has to start from the United States. As we all know, Spain is currently in a state of ruin, with most of its property lost. But no matter what, the ancestors who settled down were still rich, and they still had two treasures. Among Spain's ruined treasures, the most valuable is Cuba. How valuable is Cuba? Let's put it this way. Currently Italy's most profitable colony of Borneo is far behind Cuba. The colony of Cuba can provide Spain with an annual income of 5 to 6 million pounds, £1.25 lire. Cuba's ability to provide such high financial revenue depends entirely on its unparalleled sugar cane cultivation and sugar refining industry. Cuba has a unique environment that allows Cuba's sugar cane to have the highest sugar content, so Cuba's cane sugar production reaches 30% of the world's. Although sugar at this time was not an expensive food, it was much more expensive than the $2 a bag in later generations. It is precisely because of the cane sugar industry that Cuba has become the richest region in the Caribbean. The richness of Cuba is also a temptation for the United States, which is separated by the sea. As a late developing country, although the United States industrialization did not start early, its unique geographical environment and resources made the United States the world's #1 in the economic field in the past 2 years. As the saying goes, money makes people bold. This wealthy American wants to make his voice heard in the world and let people know that the United States is no longer ordinary and needs the respect it deserves. After a round of selection, Spain was lucky enough to be selected. First of all, Spain is a first-generation world power. Although it is now dilapidated, it is well known at least. Second, Spain has a colony called Cuba in the Caribbean, which is not far from the United States, and is very rich. At this time, Spain was also giving the Americans an opportunity. Its long-term oppression of Cuba made the local people in Cuba extremely dissatisfied. So in February 1895, a large-scale riot broke out in Cuba. The United States took this opportunity to express its sympathy for Cuba. The US Congress passed a joint resolution on April 6, 1896, approving the formal recognition of the Cuban rebels and urging the president to help them gain independence. The United States' ambitions towards Cuba have been fully exposed. Spain, as the owner of Cuba, immediately felt heavy pressure. At this time, when Spain faced the naked threat from the United States, on the one hand it wanted to seek help from various countries, and on the other hand it wanted to strengthen its own armaments, and purchasing warships from Italy was one of them. As for choosing to buy warships from Italy, on the one hand, you have a good relationship with the two countries and the price will not be too high. Another reason is that it is fast, and you can get the warships faster. As for how fast, it depends on when the Italian shipyard is building this type of warship will be completed. What? You said this is built for the Navy. Sorry. According to the government as well as the Navy's own regulations, the shipyard has the authority to handle the warships under construction before delivery. This is specially stipulated by the Italian government and Navy in order to find orders for shipyards. Your Majesty wants to take this opportunity to improve relations with Spain. Antonio deserves to be the Prime Minister. After listening to the details of the Foreign Secretary's explanation, he immediately thought of Carlo's intentions. Yes, I hope to win over Spain, but I don't expect it to make a difference in Western France. Obviously, Carlo was afraid that the Prime Minister would misunderstand his intentions. Although surrounding France from three sides sounded good, Carlo knew that Spain must not expect that the capital of Spain would be deceived. So, we are going to increase Spain's strength and try to narrow the gap between Spain's strength and the United States, and then make plans. For example, can we start from other places, or let Spain voluntarily sell a certain place to alleviate its impending financial collapse? Well, although the Prime Minister's guess was not accurate, it was very close. Carlo stopped him from guessing and said, I think one battleship cannot enhance the strength of the Spanish Navy at all. To be able to contain the US Navy, Spain needs at least 2 new battleships, preferably 2 cruise ships. Sure enough, he knew that it would not be easy for the king to find him. Antonio sometimes felt that he, the king, liked to get involved in hot spots. Whether it was to add fuel to the fire or to fish in troubled waters, Italy never suffered a loss. He was so perceptive. Terrible eyes. So after hearing the king's thoughts this time, Antonio was not surprised, but asked, then, Your Majesty, under what conditions are we going to purchase 2 warships without the Spaniards knowing about it? I plan to take out a loan. What do you think? Antonio frowned at the thought of the king. It is not good for Your Majesty to do this. A sudden loan without any reason will arouse suspicion. It is better to use barter. We allow Spain to use wool and pyrite to pay for the 2 warships. Spain must deliver them within 3 years. I think in this case, the Spaniards will not be suspicious. The wool and pyrite Antonio mentioned are exactly what the Italian industry needs, and wool is not mentioned as the necessary raw materials for wool spinning. In this era, in addition to being used as a raw material for the chemicals sulfur and sulfuric acid, pyrite can also be used as jewelry. Its light brass color and bright metallic luster are often mistaken for gold, so some parts have a high gloss. The ore can also be used as jewelry. This is no problem, but can Spain sell so many goods? Don't blame Carlo for asking this. You must know that 2 new warships are not cheap at all. One is quoted as high as 25.5 million lire, and 2 ships cost 51 million lire. This is not cheap at all, Your Majesty. I think Spain will not refuse this condition, because there is no more suitable choice than us. It was Foreign Minister Bacona who said this, because he not only knows Spain, but also knows the character of its Prime Minister Antonio Canovas del Castillo. This Castillo Prime Minister is a dictator activist. He will not give up on Cuba. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelos. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 372, Bartering for Ships, Part 2. As the political and economic center of Spain and a transportation hub city, Madrid's many statuses also determine its importance to Spain. Therefore, Madrid people have always been very proud and satisfied with being able to live here. However, Compared with ordinary people, Prime Minister Castillo is much more melancholy. Spain is in troubled times right now. Point in Asia. Spain's most important colony is the Philippines, but this colony is now quite noisy. The secret organization Katipunan, meaning Supreme Association of Sons and Daughters of the Nation, has become increasingly restless in the Philippines. Manila has sent several telegrams reporting that the organization is collecting arms and has evil intentions. In addition, the Japanese were also found behind this organization. The Japanese have always had great ideas about the Philippines. In addition to being rich in products, it is also the key to the declining salt and pepper colony. Manila's intention in sending this telegram is obvious. That is, the Philippines needs reinforcement, but unfortunately, Manila is destined to be disappointed. Now Spain cannot send reinforcement because in Cuba, which is more important, a war of independence has broken out. Since 1895, Cubans have broken out in riots in Santiago, Bayamo and other places, and they have intensified. These rioting rebels are led by the traitors Gomez B's and Macia Grajales, escaped the army's encirclement and suppression, and fled all the way to Mancha at the western end of Cuba. Prime Minister Castillo has sent 50,000 troops one after another, but these traitors have still not been captured. So in February of this year, he appointed Wheeler, who was always known for his toughness, as the governor of Cuba, responsible for suppressing the rebels. This Governor Wheeler was the ruthless man who created the concentration camp system. Wheeler did quite well. After serving as governor, he made significant progress by killing the rebel leader Macia Grajales during the encirclement and suppression of the rebels in May. Now it is expected that this capable general can give sustained blows to the rebels and make outstanding contributions to extinguishing the rebellion in Cuba. Prime Minister Castillo was very angry at the rebellious locals. Don't these people understand that they will not gain true independence if they leave the kingdom? Behind them, the well-intentioned support for the country will be the same after defeating the kingdom. Squeeze them. Yes, as a qualified politician, how could Prime Minister Castillo not know the reasons for the continued turmoil in these two places? Although the looting in these two places is relatively ruthless, if there is no one behind the scenes, there will be no chaos at all. The current situation is very difficult for Spain, so we can only do our best. Just as Prime Minister Castillo was secretly feeling sad, Foreign Secretary Bayan Kajubs and Navy Secretary Admiral Cervera walked in hurriedly. What's the matter, you two? Looking at the two people who came in, Prime Minister Castillo asked curiously. Prime Minister, what a happy event, a great happy event. Foreign Secretary Jubs reported excitedly to the Prime Minister. Italy is willing to sell us 2 new battleships, but requires us to pay the purchase price in full and be right, as long as it is paid off within 3 years. The words of the Foreign Secretary made Castillo, a man who has been in politics for decades, stunned for a moment, and then he immediately asked, didn't the Italians make any other demands? That's not true. The goods we are required to pay must be 5% lower than the normal price, or the price of the battleship must be increased by 5%, and taxes must be used as collateral. Jobs' answer made Prime Minister Castillo look much relieved. It seems like there is still a conditional discount, so that's good. That's good. As the saying goes, being courteous for nothing is either a traitor or a thief. Prime Minister Castillo was also afraid that there was something wrong with this suddenly enthusiastic Italian. Since he wanted to make more money, this matter would be much easier to handle. But Prime Minister Castillo looked at the Navy Minister, who was hesitant to speak, and then asked, Admiral Cervera, are you here because of these 2 battleships? Faced with the Prime Minister's question, Admiral Cervera immediately answered, yes, that's why I came here this time. Is there a problem? That's no problem, but considering that the Italians can pay in installments with goods, I would like to ask, can the Navy reselect warships? Admiral Cervera's words immediately made Prime Minister Castillo angry. Your Excellency, Admiral, this is the Italian battleship that you highly recommended to me. Are you going to regret it now? It was obvious that the Admiral's words made the Prime Minister angry. Seeing that the Prime Minister had misunderstood him, Admiral Cervera hurriedly explained, Prime Minister, I have absolutely no intention of doing this. I mainly consider that, since Italy is willing to let our country pay in installments with goods, I wonder if I can buy better warships from Italy to serve our country. Hearing this, Castillo's heart moved. Say your reasons, Prime Minister. I previously recommended Italy's new battleship, mainly because this battleship is an improved version of its Turin class. The Turin class is an extremely outstanding battleship, whether in terms of firepower, protection or speed. Perfect balance, which was reflected in the previous arrival in the Battle of the Yellow Sea. This is a reason why I requested to buy it before. It can at least allow our country's navy to resist threats from outside. Of course, this is only possible because our potential enemies are also making progress. As far as I know, they have at least two 10,000-ton battleships under construction. There are 2 more ships that are ready to be built, and we must prepare for a rainy day. That's why I think that the new Italian-style cruiser is a battleship that is completely suitable for us. New armored cruiser. Yes, armored cruiser. Facing the Prime Minister's doubts, Admiral Cervera spoke very seriously. Why I say this new armored cruiser is suitable for us is that it has excellent speed and can reach a high speed of 23 knots. Moreover, the ship has strong firepower with 8 254mm rapid-fire main guns, which can defeat other new battleships. All other warships were sunk in the sea. In addition to its firepower and speed, its armor was also not weak. The new 190 to 110mm armor can cope with most naval battles. It can be said that this current Italian cruise ship is at least capable, leading the trend in the next 5 years. At this point, he continued to speak. As long as I have 2 of these ships, I can make those young guys with malicious intentions think twice before they act. It can be seen that Admiral Cervera admires this patrol outfit very much. But with its performance here, it's hard not to be eye-catching. I heard you say so much. So how much is the price of such a boat? Facing the Prime Minister's question, Admiral Cervera answered seriously. The Italians quoted 36 million lire. What? The Prime Minister was shocked when he heard the price. It was 5.6 million pesos higher than the price of the battleship. It was too high. 1 lira 0.56 peso, but this is suitable for our Spanish Navy. I think the Italians should be willing to talk about it. Facing the Admiral's words, Prime Minister Castillo pondered, and the atmosphere was a little awkward for a while. How about I go talk first? At this time, the Foreign Secretary opened his mouth to smooth things over. That's okay, then let's talk to Zhang. Prime Minister Castillo originally thought that the Italians would not sell this model, or that they would demand too much. Little did I know that Italians are very easy to talk to. It directly stated that the 2 ships built by the company would be given to Spain first, and the period of payment in goods could be relaxed to 5 years. With such an easy to talk Italian, Prime Minister Castillo was a bit caught off guard. Therefore, in the expectant eyes of Admiral Cervera and other naval officers and soldiers, the Prime Minister could only grit his teeth and sign the purchase agreement. According to Italy, the warship could be delivered to Spain in June 1897. Chapter 373 Deterioration of Anglo-German Relations. How could this William send such a telegram? The joy of signing a shipbuilding contract with Spain had not lasted for a few days when Carlo felt a headache from reading the newspaper in front of him. What Carlo saw in front of him was a Times newspaper, which published the full text of a telegram from Wilhelm II, which he sent to President Kruger of the Transvaal in South Africa. In this telegram, Wilhelm II praised Transvaal President Kruger. I would like to express my sincerest congratulations to you and your people for single-handedly repelling the invading armed element who undermined the peace without the help of any friendly forces. You have maintained the peace of the country and defended the independence of the country. Such a telegram was an affront to the British Empire, which had always regarded the 2 Boer states as client states. Therefore, the Times published an article saying, England will never back down in the face of threats, and will never yield to insults. Not only that, the windows of German shops in London were smashed, and German sailors were frequently attacked in British ports. It can be said that, because of this telegram, the Germans in the UK were not having a good time. Of course, as to why Emperor William would send such a telegram to the little-known Transvaal President Kruger. This leads to another question. Where is Transvaal? The Transvaal is located in the northeast of South Africa. It was originally a country of Boers, mainly based on livestock farming. However, in 1884, prospecting experts discovered the world's largest Witwatersrand gold mine, RAND for short, on a remote pasture between Pretoria and the Vaal River in the Transvaal Republic gold mine, on which Johannesburg was subsequently founded. By the way, the Transvaal held 40% of the world's gold reserves at this time. Now you understand, money moves people's hearts. Faced with 40% of the world's gold reserves, it doesn't seem to matter if the Kaiser sends a congratulatory message. But unfortunately, this congratulatory message was intercepted by the British, which caused trouble, and it was big trouble. So how could the British not be angry when the Kaiser was peeping at what was considered their own gold? Especially in recent years, factory owners who have lost a lot of their share to Germany have taken this opportunity to stir up everyone's emotions. Speaking of which, the British's perception of Germany has been rapidly deteriorating in recent years because Germany's rapid rise has taken too much of Britain's share. We can see this from the data. Take steel as an example. In 1875, Britain produced 47% of the world's pig iron and 38% of its steel. Compared with Germany, Britain's pig iron and steel production had about twice the advantage. However, 18 years later, in 1893, Germany's steel output surpassed that of Britain. The British's more intuitive experience of the growth of German industry at that time came from the large-scale replacement of British domestic and overseas products by German exports. A best-selling book in the UK this year, Made in Germany, warned that a huge commercial country is rapidly rising at the expense of our country's prosperity and competing with our country for the status of world trade hegemony. One British newspaper even made the following remarks: if Germany disappeared tomorrow, all the British people in the world would be a little richer. Nations have fought 4 years at war over a city or an inheritance, wouldn't they? Going to war over a trade worth hundreds of millions of pounds a year. The expansion of the German fleet will only hit the British harder and their ships will soon be sunk or towed to British harbours. These naked remarks illustrate Britain's uneasiness about the rise of Germany. Its trade and market share are being occupied by Germany, and the British Empire's dissatisfaction with it is intensifying. The Kaiser's telegram was more like a trigger, causing the British who were dissatisfied and whose interests had been damaged to explode. William II's approach is really speechless. One more thing, the Kaiser had previously proposed an idea in Parliament. He believed that Germany should declare itself a protectorate of the Transvaal and then send troops there. Upon hearing this, Prime Minister Hohenlohe opposed this approach on the grounds that it was tantamount to declaring war with Britain. The Kaiser bluntly replied, yes, but this is only fighting on land. Well, no one can blame this. It was the growth of the German economy that gave the Kaiser the confidence to propose world policies. Germany needed colonies to provide raw material bases, product dumping sites, and capital export markets. This would inevitably conflict with Britain and France, which had a large number of colonies. This move by the Kaiser only gave the British Empire room to develop. Carlo saw clearly the dispute between Britain and Germany. Of course, this is not the path Italy may take in the future. Italy's industrialization in recent years has also produced a large amount of goods. If Carlo hadn't led Italy to seize several colonies and a huge share of the Far East, this industrialization would not have been so smooth. Of course, Italy cannot yet threaten the status of Britain and France, so it cannot be the main target for the time being. But in the future, this is bound to be the case. By the way, is there any news from Berlin benefiting from the good relations between Italy and Germany? Germany has always taken its actions very seriously. If anything happens, we will send a telegram to China as soon as possible. Hearing the news from Berlin, the Kaiser felt a little regretful. He probably didn't expect the British to react so strongly. Foreign Minister Bacona reported to Carlo the news from Berlin. It's a pity that it's too late. The relationship between Britain and Germany cannot return to the past. The trade and economic conflict between the two countries is destined to lead to a dispute. Carlo is now commenting on the relationship between Britain and Germany with high spirits. Because there is no one else, he is not afraid of spreading the news outside. Of course, he didn't make any nonsense. The relationship between the two countries will only go further and further in the future. As for Italy, it's simple. Carlo will work hard to improve the naval level of Germany and Austria. In the army, Carlo can't help much, but in the navy, it's okay to help. After all, judging from the current three emperors alliance, the Italian navy can defeat Germany and Austria in every aspect. Therefore, listening more to Big Brother will be of great benefit to their yet to be formed navy. Besides, how could Carlo harm them? As long as he develops it himself, he will definitely use it for his allies. We must let Germany and Austria feel Italy's sincerity. At least the navies of Germany and Austria must be better than in history, and preferably be able to reach a level that threatens the British Empire. Only then could Italy's importance become apparent. When Italy becomes the one who can influence the outcome of the war, then the two parties will offer a sufficient price, and it is reasonable for Italy to wait for the price. Don't think there's anything wrong with what Carlo did. This is politics. Chapter 374 Turin Automobile Factory. Turin is one of Italy's important industrial cities and its steel and military manufacturing industries are outstanding. Of course, Turin is also a sweet city. 1/3 of Italy's chocolate is produced in Turin and its surrounding areas, so it is also known as the sweetest place in Italy. Giovanni Agnelli also feels the sweetness. Today is an important day. This was a business matter between Giovanni Agnelli and his friends, and nothing could be done carelessly. Everyone should work harder and clean up the factory. The factory Giovanni Agnelli talked about looked very crude. In a production workshop converted from a small abandoned warehouse, 8 people, including Giovanni Agnelli, are working hard to make the messy workshop look better. Of course, the most eye-catching thing in the workshop is a semi-finished car placed in the middle. Judging from the pristine condition of the car, which is covered with knock marks, this is definitely a 100% hand-built car. Of course, this is also the pride of Giovanni Agnelli. Not everyone can produce 5 cars a year. In 1895, Giovanni Agnelli sold 5 cars to Baron Sedders and his friends, and in the previous year, his factory almost closed down. Look at those people who are as ambitious as myself. After setting up their own car factories, many of them produced 1 or 2 cars and then went bankrupt. There were even ones that closed down before even 1 car was completed. In Turin alone, Agnelli knew of several. Therefore, for the vast majority of automobile manufacturers, survival is the first priority. Of course, although Agnelli is still alive, if he wants to live better, his small factory needs more capital and technical help. The person he needs to receive this time is the big man who can bring him the required technology and funds. If Morales knew that others called him a big shot, he would probably wake up from the dream with a smile, because he has seen what a real big shot looks like. Moreover, as a manager of an investment bank, he is not qualified to use this title. Of course, for those workshop style car factories, Morales is indeed qualified to be called a big shot. Squeak. A car stopped in front of his factory, and Morales picked up his hat and got out of the car. "Hello, Your Excellency Morales. Welcome to Brother Automobile Factory, Giovanni." Agnelli greeted Morales as he got off the car with a sincere smile. "Mr. Agnelli, take me to your factory now." As a manager of an investment bank, Morales' time was precious, and he was unwilling to waste it. He directly asked to go to the production workshop to see it. "Okay, Mr. Morales, this way." Faced with the request of a possible big benefactor, how could Agnelli refuse? He led him directly to the factory workshop, where the documents were written. Along the way, Agnelli took the opportunity to introduce his factory. "Mr. Morales, our Brother Automobile manufacturing plant is definitely the most powerful factory in Turin. There are 3 in total. Our factory currently has 8 senior automobile manufacturing personnel, with an average of 7 years and 2 years of experience in the industry. And our factory not only has good staff, but also has talents. This is Burr, who is proficient in forging, and has 10 years of forging experience. This is Roland, he's proficient in Giovanni." Agnelli introduced the other 7 people one by one. In his words, his own car manufacturing plant was a hidden dragon and a crouching tiger, waiting to soar into the sky. Of course, these introductions are not as good as the introduction of the product. I saw Agnelli pointing at the semi-finished car. "This is a car built for Lord Garrett. This 07 car has a CN3 gasoline engine produced by the Milan Dynamics Institute, which can provide this car with strong power of up to 32 horsepower. And we use the 15 cm wide tires have stronger grip, and we use spring suspension to allow the car to run at a speed of 60 km/h without too much bumps. Morales didn't pay much attention to Giovanni Anelli's introduction. He had heard too many such introductions. Which factory owner doesn't say that his factory is so impressive? But unfortunately that's not what he focuses on. Mr. Anelli, how much does your car cost? Faced with the sudden question raised by the donor, Giovanni Anelli immediately answered, because this 07 model uses many new technologies, we sell it for 28,000 lire. However, our car factory is planning to expand its operations so as to reduce costs. Maybe in 2 years the price of the car will be reduced to 28,000 lire. It's possible to earn less than 10,000 lire. Giovanni Anelli also has his own confidence in saying this. Although cars are now all handmade, he can unify the models that everyone likes and then centrally purchase and build them, which will reduce a lot of time and costs. Morales asked after hearing this, Mr. Giovanni Anelli, what do you think is most important for automobile development in the next 10 years, and what should your factory do? Giovanni Anelli was stunned when he heard this. This big financier didn't play according to common sense at all. How could he ask this right away? However, when facing the waiting eyes of the other party, Giovanni Anelli knew that this question was quite difficult, and it was testing his own vision, so he began to think deeply. Morales waited silently, and did not rush him. After thinking for nearly 10 minutes, almost making people think he fell asleep, Anelli spoke. 4. Cars in the next 10 years, I think performance is important, but if you want to develop, price is the key factor. At present, car buyers in various countries are aristocrats or rich people, which is not conducive to the promotion of cars. I think we need to make it affordable for ordinary people. Of course, this may not be possible within 10 years, but we can let the middle class buy cars first, and then my factory needs to find a way to do this. When Giovanni Anelli said this, his eyes became brighter and brighter, and he became more and more excited as he spoke, because he felt that he had seen the future of cars. First of all, regarding the price of cars, the current income of the middle class will not consider cars worth tens of thousands of lire. It is too expensive, and they do not have that much financial resources, so we need to consider reducing the price of cars to thousands of lire. If you want to reduce the price of a car to thousands of liras, then our workshop-style handmade manufacturing will not work. The parts of the car must be made by machines. We first select 1 or 2 models that everyone likes, and then use the templates, in turn to create standardization. Cars, yes, are standardized cars, standard technology, standard specifications, and standard processes. This will definitely bring down the price of cars, even to less than 5,000 lire, Giovanni Anelli said with excitement on his face, as if he had been blessed by God. Bang bang. When Giovanni Anelli finished speaking, Morales applauded on the side, and 7 other employees also applauded. Wonderful, very wonderful. I haven't heard such a wonderful speech for a long time, Morales said to him with a smile on his face. Congratulations, Mr. Giovanni Anelli, you convinced me. Don't worry about the investment. It will take a few days. I hope you don't misunderstand. This is because granting funds to you all requires approval. I can only approve a maximum of 20 qualifications for thousands of liras. Morales' words made the others extremely happy, but Giovanni Anelli was much calmer, and he smiled slightly. This is a problem for you, Your Excellency. This is not because Giovanni Anelli is unhappy, but because he feels that, after mastering the code of wealth, Giovanni Anelli has become more confident in the car factory he founded, so money is no longer a problem. You are welcome. Morales then spent a lot of time chatting with Anelli, and it was obvious that after that baptism, Morales respected him much more. But time passed quickly, and it wasn't long before the sun was setting. Morales walked out of the workshop, glanced at the sign posted outside, and said to Anelli, who was seeing him off, "This brother's car factory is not impressive enough. I think it can be named after Turin." Automobile works, Giovanni. Nelly thought about the name in his mouth. Thank you for your suggestion. I will consider it carefully. Chapter 375 Diesel Engine. The National Power Laboratory in Milan is one of the 3 major laboratories in Italy, and is also a major scientific research unit for power system research. It can be said that Italy ranks first in power research. Even when the Navy's ship power research encounters problems, it still needs the help of the Milan Power Laboratory. Of course, the National Power Laboratory in Milan is also huge in size, with 3 major categories and 17 subcategories, with a total of more than 800 researchers. Of course, in addition to researchers, the National Power Laboratory also has its own supporting factories, which are responsible for manufacturing various equipment parts required for experiments. Such a well-equipped laboratory must cost a lot of money. The Milan laboratory has spent hundreds of millions of dollars over the years, and of course it has produced a lot of output, but overall it is still losing money, with losses of hundreds or tens of millions every year. Especially in the past 2 years, the emergence of various new materials and equipment has made the laboratory's losses even more serious. Last year alone, it lost more than 15 million lire. Of course, such a arrogant style naturally requires a big sponsor to withstand it. Currently, the biggest sponsor behind the Milan laboratory is the Savoy family. The Savoy family has gained a lot in these years, so this year it is more than 10 million lire, which can be withheld for the time being. As for the future, who knows? Of course, such a wealthy power laboratory naturally needs to recruit a group of valuable scientists, and Rudolf Diesel is on the list. Speaking of which, Diesel has a close relationship with Italy. Diesel previously set up his own laboratory in Germany to study compression ignition engines. Of course, research is also difficult, especially when Diesel uses diesel as fuel. The structural strength of compression ignition engines has always been a problem. During one experiment, parts on the cylinder scattered like shell fragments, almost causing casualties. The experiment did not go well. Diesel's funds were gradually exhausted, and the laboratory seemed to be unable to continue operating. At this time, an important funder proposed that he go to Italy to conduct experiments, and the remuneration was also very generous. Faced with the favorable conditions and the predicament, Diesel had no choice but to accept them. When he came to the Milan laboratory, he discovered that it was impossible to do things behind closed doors. If you work alone at home and do research and development, you are no match for the joint research and development of many people. Many of the questions that bother you have answers here. Therefore, Diesel also gave up the idea of making a fortune from this. Instead, he became more interested in scientific research and wanted to produce practical results for the diesel internal combustion engine he designed. And today, a new experiment begins. Diesel once again came to the experimental site with his newly designed 4-stroke diesel engine. Buck, how was the checkup? Diesel asked about the assistant assigned to him by the laboratory. Although Buck was the assistant assigned to him by the laboratory, Diesel was very satisfied with his assistant during the 2 years of getting along with him, both in terms of knowledge, practical ability and practical skills. It can be of great help to you at work. I've checked it twice. I just checked it myself once, and there's nothing wrong with it, assistant. Buck's answer did not reassure Diesel. Buck, do you think there won't be any problems this time? Don't blame Diesel for asking this. He has conducted no less than 20 tests at the National Power Laboratory's test site alone. However, this diesel internal combustion engine always has problems. Either the materials are not up to standard, causing damage to the internal combustion engine, or sealing problems lead to serious power loss. Dealing with these problems has almost caused Diesel's mental decline, so he doesn't want to slowly search for improvements after problems arise. If he fails, he will change his mind and continue to improve. You too, can I start? The staff at the testing site asked the 2 people. As for the staff at the proving ground, this is because those technical personnel are too valuable, and the power machines they develop may be dangerous. In order to protect those valuable scientific researchers, other people will do the testing work. This is a system enforced by the laboratory after the tragedy of losing 7 researchers in an experiment, one of whom was a science and technology master. Start. Wait a minute. Let's start. Faced With the direct gazes of the test site staff, Diesel was finally defeated. So with expectant eyes, the staff started the diesel engine. A deafening roar sounded as the 4-stroke diesel internal combustion engine continued to reciprocate. The indicator driven by its connecting rod kept rotating, and it seemed that nothing was wrong. Professor, it seems that we were successful in the early stage. Assistant Buck looked at the rumbling diesel engine and commented to Diesel beside him, "It does look better than the previous times, but we can't take it lightly. We hope this machine can pass the test." The test is actually very boring, and a dynamic test like this is even more boring. The machine keeps running, and the staff needs to check the records every once in a while, and then hand over the recorded information to the researchers waiting on the side point. After receiving the record book from the staff, the two of them checked it. Rotational speed 900, 1200 R/minimum, average effective pressure 2.0-3.2 MPa, average piston speed 8.1 m/s, and torque, fuel consumption rate. After the two talked for a while, they didn't see any problems. What else can they do now? Just continue to wait. The boring experiment lasted for a day, and the two of them stayed here most of the time except for eating. After the sun set in the west, the staff who had also been tired from the day stopped the experiment. "Professor Diesel, there seems to be no problem with your diesel internal combustion engine. After working for almost a day, we checked and found no problems. I believe the test can continue tomorrow." The staff's words made Diesel feel a little confused. The compression ignition engine developed over the years has finally seen the light of day. Although the machine has only passed its first day, according to the staff, if there are no accidents in the next 2 days, it should not be a problem. Thank you, Buck. Diesel was very excited at this time. His wish for these years was finally coming true. "Professor, you deserve all this." The assistant's words made Diesel extremely happy, "But without your help, I definitely wouldn't be able to do it now. I still want to thank you, Buck." For the next 2 days, Diesel stayed at the proving ground and watched the diesel internal combustion engine he developed run. The results are also pleasing. The 4-stroke diesel internal combustion engine runs very well. Of course, its high horsepower and the use of waste oil and diesel as power fuel, which can only be used for heating, are naturally very eye-catching. Of course, as Carlo, who has always paid attention to diesel's progress, he also knew about the advent of practical diesel engines. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.